Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast. I'm Kamran.
And I'm Billy.
Billy, what would you say we do here?
Well, we like to dig deep into a bunch of books and shows and movies that we love.
In excruciating detail, right?
In excruciating detail. And we like to talk about things that we like about them, what they make us think, and what we learn from them. And a lot of times we're going to go off topic, but we're going to bring it back in. Basically, it is just two guys hanging out talking about their favorite stuff. And it's not meant to be a replacement for anything. It's meant to be a companion to anything that we're talking about, any shows, any movies, any books that we're talking about. And we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Hopefully you'll enjoy the show with us.
One final note before we begin the episode. If you would like to support our show, we have a Patreon set up. You can find the link at horsefrogproductions.com. You can also email us with any feedback at contact@horsefrogproductions.com. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description. Before we begin the episode, I need to make a correction. During this episode, I refer to Madeline Stillwell as the CEO of Vought Industries. She is, in fact, the Senior VP of Hero Management. Additionally, I mention an X-Men character named Marrow, and I say that she was in Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. She is a member of the Morlocks. Today we are talking through episode 2 of The Boys, the show on Amazon Prime. I'm joined by Billy, my co-host.
Greetings.
We will do our standard NSFW warning prior to episodes of this show. This show is intended for a mature audience and has extreme violence and some scenes of sexual misconduct. If these topics upset you, then we do not recommend you continue listening.
Do we give the South Park a disclosure with this is actually show is unfit for anybody?
I don't know if I want to go that far. Actually,
no one to
I want people to watch the show.
I'm 52. I'm 52. Well, that's true. I'm 52. I could still be too young to watch this show, though. Sometimes
the episode begins immediately after the last episode. We see Huey in the electronics store immediately after he's asked who the is Butcher, because Butcher just said, "I'm not, in fact, a Fed."
Right.
He is again. He is again confirming that Butcher is not a Fed. We're hearing sirens in the background, and Butcher is explaining to Huey that unless he wants to explain why they have America's favorite invisible dead on the floor, he needs to help Butcher put the body in the trunk of the car. Huey reluctantly helps at this point. They're driving away from the electronics store. Butcher is driving, and he is explaining that he has worked for the feds, among other people. He's kind of like an independent contractor that gets called in to solve people's problems.
A fixer.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing him.
There we go.
They begin to hear some beating noises from the back of the trunk. Something is hitting the trunk lid. And Huey's eyes get all big. And
he gets really excited there, doesn't he?
He does. He realizes, yes, translucent's alive. And he thinks they're out of it. And he wants the Butcher to pull the car over immediately and let him out. And Butcher's explained to him, this is way worse now because he's seen our faces. Huey still wants to get out of the car. And again, Butcher needs to remind him that if he walks away now, he'll never get payback for what happened to his girlfriend. He'll spend the rest of his life in regret. While Huey is processing that last statement, Butcher tells him he knows a top man that will know what to do.
Yes, he does.
Butcher takes them to a building that appears to be in some industrial warehouse type area, kind of like those dock type areas you see around New York. You know, they're kind of by the water. They frequently show up in crime movies.
Where I guess you can make all the noise you want there and not draw unwanted attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A woman opens the door after Butcher knocks on it, and Butcher asks if Frenchie is around. The woman doesn't say anything. She's looking at Butcher, Then she glances at Huey and almost does a double take, as if now she's really looking at him. He caught her attention. She really focuses on him, and then she puts her hand on his face and is really feeling his face. Like she's feeling the bone structure of his face,
Yeah.
putting it all over the left side of his face. What do you think's going on there?
Well, you see blind people do this,
Mm-hmm.
where they feel people's faces, and she has some other mannerisms that strike me as someone who's blind, but then she does other things that they may not think that. So, but that's what comes to mind for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah, I did pick up a little bit of that. Yeah, I hadn't put that together. I don't know if it's ever confirmed if she has any powers. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't remember anything
yeah.
about her in particular. She's just pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Looks
she seems
pretty
pretty cool.
dangerous.
Yeah. She still doesn't say anything and turns around, leading them into the building. Huey turns to the butcher. His eyes are wide. He's just like, what is happening? He's about to, his mouth is opening to ask a question, and Butcher just stops him. He goes, you'll love Frenchie. And he just leads him into the building.
I love Frenchie.
Yeah. We're introduced to Frenchie. He's blasting some type of French music. I'm not sure if you could call it rap, but it has a similar cadence to it and beat. He's standing in front of a table of guns and seems to be checking them or performing maintenance on them. Butcher has to yell over the music to get his attention. The music's so loud. Frenchie greets him with Monsieur Charcuter, which translates to Mr. Butcher in English. And Frenchie will do this periodically where he speaks in French, hence Frenchie.
Is he French Canadian or is he French?
I take it as French.
He seems pretty hardcore. I think he's pretty French.
He has the French look about him.
He does have the French look to him, and I love him. But my little silly note here, I work at a retail place still, and I saw a charcuterie board this week and looked it up. I'm like, what is a charcuterie board? And now we know it's a butcher's block, I guess.
You will frequently see these on Reddit. People will put them in, I think, the food section where they have their little platter of various cheeses and sausages and grapes and crackers and mustards and what have you on there. Artichoke hearts. I don't know. Whatever you can think of. Yep.
Did you always feel like you've never quite grown up yet because you never found a time and or place to do that?
What makes you think I haven't done that?
That's true. I don't know this. I've not really done this, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But
I'll tell you,
it's just curious.
I haven't gotten super fancy with it, but growing up, my mom for Christmas, she used to always get Hickory Farms cheeses and sausages, and we would have that with crackers or something. It's kind of a Christmas tradition. So it may not be the fanciest of charcuterie boards, but we have a little bit of that. Little influence.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, that's I could say that's about the depth of my experience. Yeah. Holidays.
Yeah, I haven't gone.
Holidays and weird cheeses.
I haven't gone to a French butcher shop and gotten, or I guess who does the cured meats? I guess it would be Italians do more of the cured meats, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Moving along. Frenchie tells him, Butcher, this is a surprise. It's good to see him, and asks if he brought him the $40,000 that he owes him. Why else would Butcher show his face around there? Butcher tells him he has something better and asks if he would like to double his money. They both laugh. It's a little bit uncomfortable, kind of a little bit, on edge. And then Frenchie responds with the double of 0 is 0. He then turns to Huey and asks who he is. Butcher introduces Huey by name and says they're just working on a little job together. Frenchie asks, and he's still alive? Butcher laughs a little bit uncomfortably. Did you pick up on that as well?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Maybe he doesn't want Huey knowing about the body count of his companions from the past jobs.
Right?
He says, Butcher says Frenchie has worked with him before, and he's still in one piece, to which Frenchie responds, am I? That's an interesting way to respond, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, I'm assuming that Butcher leads these people into some seriously dangerous situations.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the episode based off some of the behaviors that we see. So I don't want to get too much into that topic right now, but
Right.
I will say that there is a past history here for sure.
There is.
Mm-hmm. Butcher gets serious and asks if Frenchie wants to know what the job is or not. The camera takes them back outside. They're standing behind Butcher's car. The trunk is still closed. Butcher tells Frenchie to open it. Frenchie asks who is in there. The fact that he isn't even phased by someone maybe in this trunk is a good indicator
Right.
of the type of the work that he and the Butcher have done together in the past.
Yes. Well, it's not what. Notice you pointed that out. It's not what's in the trunk. Who. It's a who. So this is not old or unexpected behavior or arriving with people in trunks.
Mm-hmm. No cause for concern. Simply who's in there.
Yeah. It's kind of scary.
Mm-hmm. And Butcher has a cattle prod that he has on his shoulder. He activates it with a flourish, and he asks Frenchie where his sense of adventure is. There's another clue. Frenchie should be a little worried. Frenchie opens the trunk, sees nothing, but Translucent starts cursing at them, telling them they are dead. Butcher tasers Translucent. Frenchie freaks out.
Yeah, he does.
He pulls a gun out of his waistband, cocks it, and puts it under Butcher's chin. He tells Butcher to go away and take Translucent with him. Butcher tries to calm him down. Frenchie tells him Translucent is chipped. The Soups could be on their way at this moment. He says Butcher has brought the problem to his doorstep, and it's not his problem to deal with. Butcher pointedly tells him, it is now. He's seen your face. He really puts him in a bad spot here. You know?
He does.
He isn't leaving. Butcher isn't leaving until he gets the help or the Sevens show up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I really feel that this kind of shows how Butcher is accustomed to dealing with his companions. And this kind of leads back to what Frenchie said earlier. You kind of have to wonder about their relationship.
Well, you know, I think you noticed there that I've got a note right about where you do. We're talking, this is how ruthless he is, and he sees people as items to be used, roles to be fulfilled. Even if he has a connection with them at some point, it still kind of seems to break down to how he can use them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very focused on the end goal.
Yes, he is.
By any means necessary. Which he's not really a hero. You kind of root for him, but
he's our anti-hero because he's very charismatic. I mean, he's obviously got a way of assembling some dangerous people to help him do some things against other dangerous people. I don't know very many people who I'm going to call in a scenario of dealing with dangerous people because I don't deal with dangerous people.
That you are aware of.
that I am aware of, correct.
I'm not saying I'm dangerous, but you know.
Not that I know. Yes.
Right.
I am aware. You're correct, sir.
Okay. This next part of the show. I feel bad for laughing at this. It is so hilarious. It's dark, but I mean, it's just.
You see my highlight down there. What my favorite moment is in that scene.
All right, we transition to a live stream of A-Train visiting a child in the cancer ward of a children's hospital. It's a Make-A-Wish type event. They have almost 900,000 people watching this event live. There are emojis on the bottom right hand of the screen that people can select. There's a number of different things. It's got some happy faces, neutral faces, mad faces, sad crying face, just your kind of range, right? Right now, The emojis floating up on the right side of the screen are hearts and thumbs up emojis,
Right.
giving you the
As he
general
enters the room. Yeah.
giving you the
Like,
general
far
audience
out, dude.
sentiment.
Far out, A trains here. All right.
The kid does not look happy to see him.
New.
A Train brought this kid an action figure of himself, and the kid says thanks out of politeness, but we can tell it's not heartfelt, and his tone certainly says he doesn't like the gift.
Yeah.
We should also point out that the kid is wearing a translucent t-shirt.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very obvious. It's very blatant.
He's also a little bit old to be receiving an action figure. Now, I mean, nothing against people that actually collect collectibles, right? But
True that. I've got some.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just saying, this kid giving it to someone that you don't know very well as a gift, he does seem a little bit old to be receiving this, right?
Yes. I guess so.
The child says he's sorry.
He's old enough to die.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. Was that gross? Was that rough? I'm sorry.
I don't know. Depending on the age of the child, either way. The child says, I don't know where to go with that. The child says, that's all right. The child says he's sorry. He asked for translucent. A Train says translucent is on a secret undercover mission right now, but the kid got the A Train to show up instead. The kid says his wish was to meet translucent. That was his only wish, and that translucent is his hero. We now begin to see the first sad crying face emojis show up. And the emojis quickly begin to turn negative. All the good ones are gone. There's a surprise face emoji in there. The rest are all sad face.
I'm not that much on knowing emojis, but even I can feel the pain from the emojis on this point, that's rough.
Okay, this is where it gets really bad. A Train says, well, maybe translucent can swing by next week. He looks up at the kid's doctor, and the camera pans to the doctor, and the doctor, he's given A Train a warning shot with his look, and he's shaking his head like very small, like slowly, a small motion, and A Train picks it up. And the emojis are now turning to angry emojis.
I have to pause it at that moment and back it up and watch that head shake from the doctor because I just love that slightly imperceptible, just like, no. He's lucky if he's going to make it through the next sentence before next week. It's not happening.
Bad. No. A Train doesn't know how to handle this situation. He tells the kid that maybe he can't turn invisible, but he's the world's fastest man, and that has to mean something. A very poor attempt at recovering.
Right. It's at least an attempt, though.
It is an attempt, yeah.
I'll give him that.
This is where he really messes up.
Crap, though, it's like...
He also promises the kid that if he gets better, he'll teach him to run as fast as him. And the kid looks at him and goes, oh, yeah? You going to teach me how to outrun cancer? It's like...
Oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry.
And A Train just sighs, and he's like, yeah. And he looks at the camera, and he's like giving a thumbs up. And then the live stream is now only showing around 500,000 viewers. So they lost whatever goodwill they could have generated with all those 900,000, almost million people. Now they got a bunch of 500,000 angry people.
I'm reminded of a beautiful sketch from Kids in the Hall, which is now back to being Amazon property.
Okay.
And where we get a Cancer Boy sketch in a drug movie. So Cancer Boy is all I could ever think about, and I can't stop laughing. And I'm sorry. I apologize that I can't stop laughing, but it's so funny though.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel bad for A Train, even though A Train's a terrible person. That's a brutal situation.
They put him in a rough spot.
Dude,
how could he win?
Spot.
How could he win?
No way you could win that one, dude.
Yeah. It's just, it's so dark, but I mean, God, the way they cut it together, man.
Can you teach me to outrun cancer? It's absolutely brilliant, dude.
We switched to Madeline's office. That's the CEO of Vought, where she and Ashley, that's the PR manager, our favorite. They're
Yes.
watching the live stream.
I got edited because of her, but anyhow, let's continue, please. I'm just teasing. Let's continue, please.
Madeline tells Ashley to turn the live stream off in disgust. And she chastises Ashley, asking her how many times does she have to tell her that A-Train has to be on a script. This is what happens when he's off script. Ashley promises it'll never happen again. Don't worry about it. It'll never happen again. And Madeline now switches gears and she wants to know where Translucent is. Ashley says they know he isn't in the building because he hasn't triggered any of the motion sensors. So he's probably off on another one of his benders. When you and I were discussing Translucent in the last episode, we kept coming back to his behavior, particularly the incident with the mom and the two kids, then the repeated bathroom appearances.
Right.
If we add alcohol and drug issues to what we already know about him and what he's capable of as a soup, we can really begin to see the potential for this character to get involved in some really abhorrent behavior.
I'm assuming he does nothing that is not abhorrent. Mm-hmm. It's all bad behavior, I'm assuming, at this point.
Right. And what makes it worse is the fact that Vought knows about the issues and has mitigation steps in place to deal with the situation indicates they don't really care about how bad this stuff is. It's all just handling the outcomes, right?
It is, and unfortunately that's just how a majority of most companies are. We worked for a big company that always paid things out as opposed to doing the right thing sometimes. Mm-hmm. So,
right.
And I think it's a
well, in that case,
it's a weird place. It's a really weird case to be in, or really weird, to have. But they're people. I mean, let's not forget that they're just people, and people behave atrocious. They're worse than the worst rock stars.
Right, because rock stars can come and go, but soups, I mean, there's a couple hundred of them here, right? But they are more rare.
It's not a lot. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a lot more rare.
Mm-hmm. And then you add the fact that they're building up these brands around them, and they don't want to just fire a soup. And there's the added thing where what's a rock star going to do? Just mess up a hotel room? Right? Whereas you fire Homelander, you cut your building down in half with his laser beam eyes or whatever, right?
Yeah, we have a great season. Remember in season 2, that fantasy he has of mowing down the people?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
It's a beautiful scene in a mean, cruel way, but he has that ability to mow down people in the thousands without breaking a sweat. Mm-hmm. That's scary in itself.
Yeah. What he's capable actually. Of. Yeah. They don't really. The Man of Steel fight at the end where they're knocking the whole city down, that's basically what they're capable of. And they actually showed it in that movie, right? Knocking buildings down, destroying the whole city practically, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thousands. Can you imagine the thousands that would die in that kind of conflict and just some folks duking it out in the street?
Yeah. The buildings falling from great height. There's all the
20, 30,000 folks dead easily, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Especially if the buildings had people in them.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking. Okay, that's a horrifying reality. So
right. Back to Madeline and Ashley. Madeline asks if Translucent has a team up scheduled for the next day, and Ashley confirms he does indeed with the Deep.
The Deep.
Madeline tells her to get a.
I love the Deep, man. I love that guy. He's so dreadful, but he's amazingly hilarious.
You like him because of the antics that he introduces to the show?
Yeah, I think that's part of what it is.
Everybody clowning on him and just them really playing up the Aquaman aspect of it, like the joke of the fish man, that kind of.
I covered this later on, but it's like, well, dude, at least Aquaman has some respect. The guy's a king, for goodness sake.
Right.
He
has some honor.
He has some honor, and he has some people. At least the Amazons dig him and think he's a viable human being because he's a king. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this guy is just like you're right. He's the fish guy. Mm-hmm. He's the fish guy. Mm-hmm. That fish guy could probably crush my head, but he couldn't do that to the Homelander. But
right.
But to me, those normal guys, he could tear us up, dude.
Madeline tells Ashley to get a backup set up and tells her to leave the office. So the backups for the team up to replace Translucent. We go to Starlight in the hallway outside the command center for the 7. She runs into Black Noir and introduces herself to him since she hasn't really had a chance to speak with him personally. She puts out her hand to shake his, and he just stares at her uncomfortably for 6 or 7 seconds.
Yeah, that's a rough dead space right there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And then
I wonder about that guy. I love him. I wonder what's going on with that fella.
Really. And what makes it worse is his entire face is covered at all times. He has that like spandex type mask. You can't get any emotional expression out of his facial features because you can't see him.
No.
He's not making any noise. He's not saying anything. Even his body language, he's always standing upright. You don't get anything from him.
Yeah, not a thing.
Yep. He continues to walk past Starlight. And going on back to him for a second, the fact that he has no speaking at all makes me wonder about what they use him for in the 7.
Can he speak?
That's a good question. I mean, he could have his mouth sealed up with scars or something, for all you know, right?
Yeah.
We have no idea. But when you talk about public appearances, movies, merchandising stuff, sure, he'd have probably the coolest action figure of all of them.
Sure, absolutely.
But outside of that, he's not going to make a wish to make anybody happy. He's not going to go to a ribbon cutting ceremony. He's just, I'm not sure what the corporate incentive is to have him on the 7.
He's just, maybe there is a need for a man of mystery.
Oh yeah, possibly.
I mean, I don't know, because he fits no other bill.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, he doesn't speak. We don't even know if he can speak. He appears pretty intimidating.
Do they bill him as a detective type?
I don't know, but I'm always under that assumption because we always lump him under the Batman heading.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, if you're going to lump someone as a Batman character, they kind of automatically become the Batman, Green Arrow, Nighthawk, these other guys that are eccentric billionaires who are crime fighters.
Mm-hmm. But only one of them is the world's greatest detective.
Only one of them is Batman. That is true. Now, do you know what DC stands for in DC Comics?
I do not.
It's Detective Comics.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
It's Detective Comics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Batman, Detective Comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally am sick to death of Batman.
We are going to do an episode where we hash this out. After the last episode where you mentioned Superman, I didn't want to get into it. I figured out what I want to talk about when it comes to Superman. Okay. Why I don't love him like you do.
Okay.
I'm not saying I don't like him.
Sure.
We're gonna sit down and
guy.
we're gonna do an episode on this, and we will discuss this in depth. We promise.
He seems like a decent fella. None of these people.
He is a good person, but I'm going a different route with my reasoning on this.
Okay, copy that. I look forward to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you may understand my viewpoint after that.
I do. I look for, but it beats another person that we work with who has this total Batman infatuation going on, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sick of Batman.
Well, I do have the Batman infatuation.
I like Batman, but it's like, okay, look, you're the problem, dude. He's the problem with Gotham. Don't you know it? He's the problem with Gotham.
Mm. Let's do a Batman and Superman, Batman versus Superman episode.
Okay, sure. I know everyone hates on that, but you have to. But to go into that, you must watch the director's cut.
I did. That's the only one I ever saw.
Okay,
same thing with Justice League. Yeah.
That's the only one I ever saw was the Snyder cut.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it was worth the wait. I think I love the Snyder cut, dude.
Okay.
But I'm a hoe for Zack Snyder, though. I'm sorry.
We have veered way off topic. Let's continue this. We will have that episode later. Okay.
Coming up.
Going back to Starlight, Black Noir has kind of snubbed her, walked by her, and then the doors to the command room are open, and Ashley calls out to her from inside the command room and asks her, how is she settling in? To which Starlight replies, it's a bit of an adjustment.
Imagine so. From punching holes in your mother's garage to being in the fought towers with the 7.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other stuff that's been going on too.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Ashley introduces Starlight to someone named Trevor from the crime analytics department. And this particularly interests me because I do analytics now as my job.
Okay.
And uh, I was really paying attention to what this gentleman Trevor is talking about. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Cool.
Ashley tells
I look forward
Starlight
to it.
that she has exciting news. Guess what? We're sending you on your first patrol tomorrow. And it's a team up. I love the way they present this, right?
I know it. I know it.
Starlight is initially very excited. Trevor hands her a tablet with her crime itinerary on it.
I love the crime itinerary.
Mm-hmm. Starlight
Brilliant.
says, "What is this?" And Trevor tells her, "This will inform you of where and when to find the bad guys. And that is what my department does."
I have a question about the crime itinerary.
Okay.
Do these bad guys have the same itinerary?
That's a good question.
Are they employees of VOT? And I mean that. I don't mean that as a bad way. I mean that sincerely. Are these VOT employees?
Well, when we get to,
let's get there, do we?
I want you to plant that idea in your mind. We're going to come back to that when we get to the team up, because I may have an idea about that.
Okay. All right. Bring it.
I did want to make a note here that a corporation with this much intel seems pretty scary. Now, there is a company called Palantir, which does government contract work for the United States, and they do similar crime analytics stuff for the Department of Defense and police stations around the United States. Okay. What they do not have is the authority to do anything or the power to do anything, because the military acts on this. VOT has these superheroes that apparently have some type of understanding with law enforcement. They're out there beating up these bad guys. You think that one guy survived in episode 1 where he got thrown up and it took him 7 seconds to come back down? No.
If he did, he is going to be in a cast for the rest of his life if he survived it.
Right. But that got me thinking, after we talked about that, I was thinking they must have some legal department that handles all of this stuff with the police, or some understanding with the police that lets them get away with this stuff.
I think that we will have part of that answered by the end of this episode.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure about that one, because of something that we talk about, that we'll talk about, and I'll try to remember to bring it up at that point, that this is them acting with the grudging nod, I guess, from law enforcement powers that be.
Right. Okay.
And who's going to tell Homelander no?
Well, that's the next extension, right? Exactly. Is even if the police wanted to do something about it, what could they do?
Yeah.
Or the military, for that matter.
We do have people that stand up to them, though. We'll get there,
right,
in this episode too. So yeah.
Going back to Trevor, he confirms that his department vets leads, crunches satellite data, and does something called CompStat, giving VOT better intel than the police. I didn't know what CompStat was, so I looked it up.
And so it is real, though.
It is real. It stands for Computer Statistics, which was the computer file name of the original program, and it's computerization and quantification program used by police departments. It was first developed in New York City in 1994. Originally, before it was put in a computer, it was basically a map on a wall with a bunch of pins where the crimes were happening.
Okay.
And this, among other factors, allowed the New York City Police Department to drastically reduce crime rates. And so what's going on here on the Wikipedia article, and I'm not passing any judgment here, there are claims that the police have manipulated some of this crime statistics data or to benefit them in some ways. And I'm not, I haven't checked any of this stuff. It's just claims on the Wikipedia article.
Sure.
What I can say is I wanted to dive into this topic here in this context of VOT, just to say that when you have a data set, the collection of the data can be biased. The interpretation of the data can be biased. You can twist a data set to do whatever you want it to do.
I'm a believer that Data says nothing. It's the scientists that read the data that say things.
That is exactly right. If you don't have any morals or principles guiding you, you can twist it into whatever narrative you want. You can adjust the
Global
scale to
warming.
show that it's a huge
Sorry.
difference when it's a marginal one, whatever story you want to tell, right? So that's one of the critical things that analysts have to understand is you have to have morals, otherwise you're misleading people.
Yes.
Right. And Vought, as we've seen, doesn't seem to have many morals.
They have no compunctions
Right.
about manipulating anything.
Now, Trevor seems like a pretty decent guy, but
yes, he does.
There may
seem
be
like
other people there
fella.
that are not as decent in the
Well,
crime
I'm
analytics
sure
department.
it's like, I'm sure just like at any company, there's some guys like me and you that were some pretty cool fellas that worked on the lower level. And then on the upper echelon, there's probably some folks that know a lot more, and et cetera, as we climb up the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just because the leadership is inherently evil, does that make the cogs bad? But that's the good old question, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being a cog in the machine. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too sidetracked. I apologize.
Right. Well, I mean, I agree with you that sometimes people are swept along. They don't see an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So Starlight is speaking with Ashley and Trevor. She thanks them, but she tells them she prefers to do her own investigating. Ashley interrupts her, stating, "And this is why we love you." But then she follows it with, "But it's not coming from us. It's coming from corporate to protect you. What if you nab the wrong person? There is liability to consider."
And as I point out, she makes the "and this is why we love you" statement twice, right? In this conversation.
Yeah.
And this is why we love you.
And the delivery of it is always,
yes.
And this is why we love you, but anything.
Yeah,
and,
but you're an idiot. Shut up. You're an idiot.
When you tell somebody something, "Oh, you did a great job, but whatever you said that was nice before the but doesn't matter."
Right.
Right. And Ashley is using this as a control mechanism she thinks this is how she can convince Starlight to be quiet in a nice way and then tell her why she wants her to do what she's asking her to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Ashley is speaking with Starlight about, "And this is why we love you." And then Starlight's reading the crime itinerary and realizes the Deep is her partner in the team up. And I love this. Trevor says, "It's a water adjacent crime."
It's a water adjacent crime. I think that's one of my favorite sentences I've ever heard uttered.
Mm-hmm.
Uttered beside maybe some technology I invented is going to destroy the earth or something crazy like that. But yeah, water adjacent crime. That's a good one.
Starlight says he should go by himself, the Deep. He doesn't need her. They tell her that it was originally going to be the Deep and Translucent, but everyone on floor 82, this is the executive leadership team floor, yes, they're so excited to get Starlight out there that they swap Translucent out for Starlight. The way they present this, there's not a single point of truth to it. And this really gets me. Just tell me the truth. Just don't sugarcoat it. Tell me the truth. And in this particular case, they're trying to twist it to make it sound like a positive thing to her when there was another reason why this happened.
They do, but they also think she's a hayseed. Mm-hmm. You know, she's representative of our Midwest Christian conservative people. So yeah, they're idiots. Mm-hmm. So they don't know any better. So.
She is kind of young as well. That may play into it in that she doesn't have a lot of life experience yet to draw on these types of behaviors. That's a possibility as well. I
like that she's a quick learner.
She is. I agree with that.
She's
learning stuff the hard way sometimes, but she's learning quickly. Yeah.
It's a little hard knocks, baby. Mm-hmm.
Starlight says back home, she always patrolled alone. And Ashley again says, "And this is why we love you." But we see a 23% uptick on social media mentions and hero hashtags when there's a team up. People love a team up. I couldn't work with her. Couldn't do it.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Oh my word. Yeah. She's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be an exercise in keeping my mouth shut. It's maybe they need to stick her with Yoda and training Jedis to, patience or something like that. So sorry to mix the media.
We're going to put you in the Ashley room. You will test your patience.
Yes. I could see that as a test. That man, I would fail it.
How long do you think you'd make it?
I don't know.
It depends on how
I,
bad she's being, because
I'm,
she gets pretty
I'm one
bad.
of these. I'm one of these people that it's like during the stuff that you think would make me snap is when I would snap. It's like no, it's not then. It's like later. It's down the road, and she's probably said nothing and been real quiet, and then I just snap. You know, so,
I've only
sorry.
seen you get unsettled one time, and I don't know.
I've used that.
I,
I told that as an embarrassing moment at a workload planning meeting at my job.
I I remember that specifically because you were always so friendly and always willing to go take care of every single customer. But this guy just
Oh,
pushed all your buttons the wrong way. And I remember I had to put my hand on your arm just to
it
get
was
you to
like this.
calm down.
You know what it was? It was December 26th, dude.
Is
It was the
is
day
that what
after
it was?
Christmas.
Okay.
That's what it was.
I couldn't.
So it was everybody and their dog, was there for returns.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I told him to quit saying the F word. And then I said, I can say the F word too. I'm still not proud of that, but it's funny. But yeah, y'all had to, I think Mike came out of the office there because that was still, I wasn't LP then. Yeah, you were there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just said that. It's like he didn't, and that guy was saying, I said stuff, like, he didn't say that. He said this,
Oh,
but
man. Yeah.
maybe he shouldn't have said that. But
you were normally the one calming me down. And that's just, that's the only time I've ever seen you lose it. And it wasn't even that bad compared to some of the shenanigans I got up to. So
it happens,
that's not
though.
to say much.
I don't get into a lot of shenanigans, but sometimes my mouth does. Getting older has helped a wee bit.
I've been working on it. Yeah.
I'll pray for you on that one if you'd like. It's a good one.
I appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thankfully, the show switches out of the BS corporate proceedings with Ashley, and we get to go back to Butcher and his gang. They are seen speeding up to an abandoned restaurant. It appears that the restaurant used to be an Italian restaurant, and Frenchie has brought a van filled with equipment. We go inside, and Frenchie and Hugh are preparing a room to contain translucent. There's this cage in the middle of the room. Where'd that cage come from? They bring it with them? Had to have.
They could have. Well, I just because Frenchie has so much stuff and so much gear.
He had it. Definitely.
It's a collapsible unit. I could see that being, you pull some pins out, it collapses, but other than that, it's pretty sturdy.
Yeah.
And especially if you hook a car battery to it like they do, I mean, no one's going to want to touch it. So I'm curious about that. We'll get to that question. I'm sorry. We'll Mythbuster that question when we get to it. I think you know where I'm going with that one.
Yep. Huey is taping up some RF shielding foil to the ceiling. This is to block the tracking chip that is in translucent. Huey says you can get the RF foil at Fry's. And
Fry's,
I wanted to ask you if this was Fry's Electronics where we used to work. You think?
I believe that it is. I'm sure that it is. There, I don't know why I say that, but it's just there's not a lot of other Fry's out there that are selling electronic stuff, and
right. It could be the Fry's grocery store, and given your suspicion that it's aluminum foil, it could be.
It could be Fry's grocery store. That's true.
Yeah, I think it's Fry's Electronics. I like to think that. So
I want to think that we were part of that. Don't you want to be that? That was we were part of that,
right? And then R.I.P. Fry's.
R.I.P.
Yeah, when I was growing up,
hey, February 23rd, 2021.
When I was growing up, that place was, man, in the 90s, it was a destination because back then you didn't have Best Buys. They hadn't really expanded from their home state yet. And Fry's had all the cool stuff. And those memories will always be with me. And I got to work there, unfortunately, on the downward trend when Amazon was starting to come up. And that really, I think, took
that crushed them.
Yeah.
That tore them up.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. But good times. I met you there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Lots of other good folks. We work with a bunch of good folks there, though.
We did. Yeah, we still keep in touch with a lot of them, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to the show. Frenchie asks if Huey is in tech intelligence. And Huey tells him, no, I'm more in sales and installation. they've wired this cage up with electricity to contain Translucent. They have a bank of batteries that they wired up, and if he touches the cage, it's going to shock him. Translucent wakes up and asks if they know who he is. And he's cussing a lot. Frenchie tells him he's not sure. He only knows so many invisible tools.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I love that.
I love Frenchie.
Even Butcher's companions are smartasses. It's wonderful.
Dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are.
Translucent asks them what they want. Money. Butcher tells them they don't want money and slams the door to the room after they left. I think it's a refrigeration unit.
It looks like it's probably a little walk-in freezer at one point. Yeah.
I would agree with that. And that has a lot of insulation as well, naturally.
Yes.
That would be a good place to hold him.
Should be soundproof as it is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Outside in the next room, Butcher asks Frenchie what he thinks, and Frenchie says, "You have dropped the Moby Dick of problems on my effing plate."
I had wrote that same thing. I was writing that when we met up on our note-taking last night. Did you see it? I was right behind you.
I think we're typing it at the same time. That was what was crazy. I saw you type it. I was like, are we typing literally the same sentence at the same time? I was cracking up.
The Moby Dick one was part of my stuff, but it was also about Stillwell.
Oh, that's right.
That was pretty funny, though. But yeah, that's hilarious. It's like I had to pause and let you I'm like, I'll just come back later. I just came back today.
I love the way he says this with the French accent. Again, with the accents, I just love it. It adds so much character to the character.
And he is a great character. Frenchie is amazing.
Yep.
I would love that dude in my corner. That guy's like a rabid dog, and he's small, so he's like a rabid weasel probably, but he's probably meaner than a dog. It's meaner than anything, I bet you.
He's very resourceful.
He's the MacGyver of the bunch.
Absolutely. On that point, they begin to brainstorm ways of killing Translucent. Frenchie is smart. He's trying to figure out how to penetrate the carbon metamaterial of Translucent's skin. Butcher asks about suffocation, and Frenchie says it's been tried by some Dominicans. Butcher says, "What happened?" And Frenchie says, "They're all dead."
Well, why didn't they just drive? I mean, now I understand that Butcher drives a pretty sweet old Cadillac, but if you got the guy in the trunk, tase him, tie him up, put him back in the trunk, and drive it in the bay. Could you drown the guy?
It's a good question. I would think so.
Would Seven show up, or the Deep may show up before he died?
Hard to say.
Possibly. Yeah. Hard to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to think he needs oxygen.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We all do. The only guy that can hang in the water is the Deep.
And even then, he needs oxygen. He just has gills.
Yes, he does. And thankfully, we're not talking about that in this episode.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But we will have that uncomfortable conversation shortly.
Butcher goes back to electrocution as a solution. Just increase the amperage, crank it to 11. Frenchie doesn't think it'll work. They come back to piercing the skin, and Butcher wants to know how they're going to do that. During this entire conversation, the camera has been on Huey, and he's looking back and forth like it's a tennis match. It's just as they're talking, he's looking back and forth. And
Scott, think about it. What's it been, 3-4 days since he was last holding his girlfriend's severed hands? I mean,
right. And
this is a lot to put up with.
And then the night before was the night that he was assaulted by Translucent at his place of work. It's a series of traumatic events. He's been thrown out of his life. And now he's with these two.
His crew, they seem equipped for it. These guys reek of special forces or something. They've dealt with crazy situations, to say the least, apparently, because they kind of talk about it that way. But this poor guy is just some schmuck like us, dropped right in the middle of all this crazy superhero nonsense, dude. That's me and you in the middle of that mess.
Yeah. It would be similar to if you were caught up with some special forces guys planning an assault on some entrenched position somewhere, right? No frame of reference. These guys are completely out of your league. You don't live this life, and you just been through a couple traumatic events on top of that. It would be a very difficult thing to handle, especially at that age.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Huey finally speaks up after this. They get to a lull in the conversation, and he asks if they're planning on killing Translucent. And Butcher says, well, we didn't bring him here for a Happy Meal.
I also had that same statement written in my handwritten notes. So I'm just waiting for you to post your notes and I will tag on. Because you write the same thing I do, apparently.
Like mine's.
Well, I love that. So that's a great line. We didn't bring him here for a Happy Meal.
Huey thinks that these two would have wanted to question Translucent. And Butcher tells Huey that at Gitmo, they had to waterboard Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 183 times over 6 months to get him to talk one time. And Butcher and company don't have the luxury of 6 months. They probably don't have 6 hours.
Yep.
And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, for those that don't remember, was one of the people responsible for planning September 11th.
Yes.
Among other things that he claims he did.
And I'm not discussing about the fact that I thought that the waterboarding problem is not a problem for me. I'm sorry. Is that a problem that I said that?
I mean, I'm not gonna.
You're gonna cut it out.
No, I don't. I don't know how I feel about it. It's a complicated subject.
It's a complicated issue, and people might tell you things that you don't. They'll tell you anything under duress, but. I think that there's ways that we can do duress.
I have
we've
to
got
think.
Some American. There's got to be a good way we can do this.
Have you heard of like the sensory deprivation stuff or the white noise things that they do as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I would have to think that's worse.
I've dabbled. Yeah, I have watched movies, old school spy movies that have dabbled in the old noise things and and also they did it in The Recruit with Colin Farrell, where they have him in that
with the rock music.
Go to sleep, they pop the lights on, put the lights back on, lights off, lights on. Yeah, that stuff would mess with you bad.
Yeah. All right, because well, either way, we'll move on. Huey is bewildered that they don't want to talk to or question Translucent, and he he says there's so many crazy things about what Butcher just said.
Right.
But Butcher is planning on killing a national treasure. People will notice something like that. And Butcher wants to know what Huey thinks the Seven will do to them when they find them. Again, he states that Huey can't get back at A-Train if he's dead.
All right.
Huey maintains he's not a murderer. And Butcher is kind of walking away. He laughs and says, that's okay. I am.
I am. Another note I had. Yes, I am. Love Butcher. He's fantastic, dude.
Yeah, is an interesting, complex character for sure.
Absolutely.
We switch to a television set and is flipping through channels. The first channel is showing a Sports Center is on, and the host is interviewing a soup named Shockwave about an upcoming race with A-Train. The race is to determine the fastest soup alive. I was trying to find this ad campaign from when I was growing up, but this reminds me of this ad campaign where it was somebody versus somebody. It was late 80s, early 90s. I could not find it, but it was like a Reebok or Nike advertisement. This is what that reminds me of.
Okay.
Really played up. It was two athletes at really peak of their game, I would say. And then it was a really big deal. I just can't remember who it was.
Right.
On the left part of the screen where Sports Center has its topics listed, the next thing that they're going to cover is a soup rugby event.
Super rugby, dude. That would be pretty epic.
Can you imagine if there's somebody that's like has some type of inertial control, like the one X-Men mutant guy, or that can just make himself not move?
Right, just shut it all down.
Yeah, or what's his name, Juggernaut, just running through people. Granted, he got his power from his helmet, but
he did. Yeah. You also know who his brother is, don't you?
Of course.
Okay, some people don't.
Yeah.
I was watching Deadpool 2 and they make that reference to somebody and they're like, who's that? I'm like, dude, come on, seriously?
I actually never saw Deadpool 2.
You need to see it. Yeah. Juggernaut's in it. He's great. It's hilarious. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an X-Force thing, right? Because that also had Cable in it.
It does, but it's such a different thing. You need to watch it, but watch the unrated cut. It's about 15 minutes longer.
I'm gonna keep it
Different
away
music
from my
choices.
children, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yes.
Are we going to discuss about Disney Plus now having the mature option? Do you have
I
do
had
you have
Disney Plus, I
Disney
don't have
Plus?
it anymore. We were kind of
Now, I don't
waiting.
care. I don't have children, but I do care about people that put out a lot of content for our children.
Mhm.
You know, doing weird things,
Yeah.
of course.
We had it, and then they just weren't putting out content fast enough, and the
Gotcha.
content that was coming out wasn't that impressive. The Disney
I get that
shows,
too.
we just cut it off. It just wasn't.
I've enjoyed them all. It's just too far apart, and the biggest problem I've got with Marvel right now is that recently, with that young lady that I'm seeing, that we sat back and watched almost all that stuff back to back.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of like overdosed on the Marvel right
Mm,
now. I'm like, okay, I'm done for the moment.
right.
I'm
It
excited about Moon Knight to be over to watch it, but it's because I'm invested in the directors.
Who directed that?
Two guys, Benson and Moorhead. They have or director. I don't know the first. It's Justin Benson and I think it's Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, I believe, are their names, and they have co-directed 4 movies, and they've been low budget movies, but they're gorgeous, beautiful. These look like high budget movies,
Okay.
and I think these guys came to Disney's attention through their low budget filming, and they're going to be they're a part of the directing crew of the Moon Knight, which is ongoing right now.
I'm going to caution you about getting your hopes up too much. The reason I say that is
It's Disney.
no. I have experience with this with Ryan Johnson and The Last Jedi.
Okay.
Prior to seeing The Last Jedi, which I despised as a movie, I really was looking forward to it because he directed a movie called Brick
Okay.
that had Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it. Excellent film.
Okay.
It's like a thriller. His girlfriend goes missing, and they use a lot of weird jargon. It's a really interesting movie. I highly recommend it. And then he also directed
Okay.
another one called The Brothers Bloom, which was a kind of a cute. Uh, I don't know. It was kind of a heist type movie a little bit.
Okay.
Both the movies were excellent. The dialogue was excellent. Directing was good. And then we get to Last Jedi, and it really disappointed me because I
Okay.
don't
I
know if it
got
was
you.
because my hopes were up too high or it just was not for me. But either way.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I was just what made me happy was to see guys that I like
Hmm.
get picked up and have a chance because they've taken some these movies that when you see these movies, you look at them, you're really it's very shocking that in particular a movie called The Endless, which looks like a huge budget movie. It's a strange science fiction kind of film, very well done, and you're like, this has some big money in it. It's not, and people like my parents who don't like things like that movie.
Okay.
And so I thought it was kind of a weird to get them to cross over into this genre with me.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm looking forward to this one in particular. So far, I've been pretty happy with their television shows. Have been pretty good. I've enjoyed it.
I'll check it. I'll check it out. Cool.
Big sidetrack. Sorry.
That's all right. Back to the Sports Center. The channel, or I guess the TV showing Sports Center, the channel changes, and we see an ad for a Homelander cuddle plush toy. And it looks really bad. It's
It
not a
does.
very good plush, I will say.
It's not even a Funko Pop quality.
Yeah,
It's like really
yeah, it
subpar.
is. And the commercial is kind of funny. The channel changes again, and it's a Vought news channel. And I didn't know they had their own news channel. I never noticed that
I don't
before.
think I don't think I noticed that either. I'll pay more attention as I go.
Yeah. And then the Deep is giving a press conference saying he has found the mayor of Baltimore's plane, and it appears to have been engine failure. And to your point about in the last episode about what the Deep needs to withstand when he's underwater at these depths, the Deep
Mhm.
found this plane 2 miles down. That's an incredible amount of pressure.
Yeah, it is. At a crush us. I mean, I don't think we can imagine. I mean, we like to think we can imagine what being crushed would be like, but I think that would just turn us inside out, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
I
pretty tough.
honestly don't know what it would do.
No, I don't either.
Yeah,
I
because
think it would break our
you see those
bones
fish
or
that
something.
come up from the depths that are not designed to be like
Yeah,
that. They really get blubbery, and they can't hold together, right? As they come up, they
yeah.
expand. I don't know what happens if You go down there. Either way, we'll
Yeah.
have to look it up.
Good question.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll investigate that.
Mhm.
Answers next episode. If we remember to come back to that.
Madeline is watching this news broadcast, and Homelander barges into her office without knocking. And before we really dig into the scene, I need to point out that these two have a very strange relationship. It is uncomfortable and weird,
Yes. To
especially
put it mildly. Nice about that.
yeah when you're watching it. It's hard sometimes. Madeline
I'll
is
say something a little bit later on about it, but it's the closest thing it comes to, though.
Mhm.
Got a very incestuous feel to it sometimes, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. Yeah.
Even though
I
there's
think
no
it's the
relation
age
there, it's
difference
still,
that probably has a little bit to do with that. I would
I
have
guess
to
so.
think.
I guess so. She's very motherly to him in a way, too.
Exactly. Yeah, we see a little bit of that in this scene, right?
Uh-oh.
Mhm.
I hope you don't hear my cat griping.
No.
Okay.
Madeline is a mother to an infant, and she has just been pumping milk. Her shirt isn't fully buttoned up, but she is clothed, and he can't really see anything, but she's not fully presentable. And Homelander says, "Whoa," and like kind of makes a show about covering kind of with his hand his vision, but then he starts chuckling, and then he puts away all pretense of not trying to look, and he's looking as she's buttoning her shirt up.
Yeah.
Now, in any normal circumstance, you can imagine what the reaction would be. First of all, he didn't knock before he came in, and the fact that she did not react either means this is a regular occurrence, or she has enough self-control to not, I don't know, put a show of being upset about it or something. I'm not sure how to process that, but either way, not normal.
Yeah. Absolutely not normal.
They make a bit of small talk about how she is still able, or she's still at it with the breastfeeding, and Homelander gives her this really backwards compliment. Personally, I think it's amazing that a woman your age can have a baby, period. And
Yes.
I put her age in the 50s, right?
Yeah,
So that is truly an advanced age to be having a child.
You should not. Your chances of problems increase. I understand that, but she's an attractive woman for her age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say she's not, but
yeah. Later in the show, they do mention that, or she was on the phone, and you kind of hear her mention that she had 8 treatments to bring this pregnancy, one pregnancy to fruition.
It's true. I forget about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She accepts this compliment and doesn't really take it negatively. She says that's very sweet of him to say that. And I wanted to ask you, do you think this is because she's managing him like you would a prima donna actor or opera singer or something like that?
I believe so. I think it's the more you look at it, the more you realize that everything she does is handling of him, and how he's a full-time job, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dude is, it's we joke about this, but the problem with this show is you've got a guy like Superman who's a sociopath. It's kind of like, that can't be good.
Yeah.
This cannot be good. Bad things are going to happen.
It's just a matter of time.
He doesn't. Oh, absolutely. You know what? It's coming. It's coming.
Right. Homelander asks if they found translucent yet, and Madeline seems a little bit surprised that he's hurt about it. He offers to help look for him. She says that's not necessary. Then she changes the subject a little bit, and she says, have you heard about the mayor of Baltimore? While she's talking, you can see the shelving behind her, and she has one of those Homelander cuddle plushes on her shelf. I didn't notice that before. Homelander looks at her. He doesn't respond for a little bit. It's a little bit uncomfortable, right? The look on his face has no warmth in it, no emotion whatsoever. When you say sociopath, you can kind of pick up on that a little bit here.
Yes, very much so.
He goes back into this friendly persona, this facade that he has. He says, oh yeah, I heard his plane went down with some sort of engine trouble. She says it's awful, and she had a meeting with him in her office just a couple of days ago. And Homelander's response is, hug your kids, right? Because you never know
Hug your
what might
kids.
happen. And she agrees. She says, that's so true. She asked rhetorically, you know what's interesting? The Deep told me, and only me, that there were scorch marks on the mayor's engine, almost as if from two small high-intensity beams, roughly the width of human eyes. He's looking at her, and he says, say what you mean to say.
Say what you mean.
Mm-hmm. She reminds him that his brand is hope, baseball, America, sunshine. He does not do vengeance. Homelander tells her he heard the mayor blackmailing her through the wall. She says she is the last person that he needs to save. And she's right. You have to think that a woman in this position is a formidable individual. She has climbed the
Absolutely.
corporate ladder. She is the CEO of a successful company. It's very profitable. She is somebody that does not need his help this way.
Yes.
This is,
Let's just put it like this. She has no fear of him whatsoever.
it
Or at least I
appears to
feel
be that way, because I think
yeah.
in her mind, she has him kind of under control. She feels that she can manipulate him. She knows him.
You're right.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. So
Yeah.
last episode, I asked you if you thought that when she wished the mayor a safe flight, whether she knew he would hear that. Based on this conversation, I'm not sure that she did.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think that's probably why I said what I said last time, is because I had this conversation in mind where he might have acted on his own, but I assume that she also is a smart woman and has that built-in probability that this idiot could be listening to me right now. He may be trying to kill somebody I'm talking about, so I better make sure I'm careful what I say. So she may not have cared that he heard that.
Right. Well, as we continue this, Homelander tells her that he did it for her.
Because my other question, I guess, she would be, wouldn't it serve her purposes? This man that she's made a deal with, even though it's kind of not the way it wanted to, it's still money in her pocket. Would she have killed this man, something that could be more money for several years to come?
I have to think that she did not want the mayor to die. Now, given the next thing she tells Homelander here is, did the timing occur to you? Because she's criticizing Homelander about him doing this right before they're about to have this meeting with the Senate Appropriations Committee.
That's true.
Even if she wanted it to happen, it would not be optimal timing for her.
Right.
This makes me think I was going down the wrong path with that. But the showrunners, they made it so weird when he flew by the window when they're having that conversation. I maybe I'm reading into it too much.
Okay. See, and I'm not a person that looks at what other people say about things like shows like this. So I've never heard anyone talk or comment on that, what they thought about Homelander being out there at that time.
Right.
You know, and we talk about Translucent being a voyeur.
Yes.
What about him? He's obviously a voyeur too, because we watch him watching her through walls.
Right.
So does he just spend all his free time just watching her?
Hard to say.
I think he might.
He may. It seems to be an obsession.
Yeah. Never thought about it like that, but there you go. Okay.
Yeah. When he tells her that he did this for her, you see a little bit of his mindset when it comes to her, right? Where he's seeking her approval. He wants to make her happy. He's trying to get in her good graces. He wants to be a good boy.
He's desperate for her attention.
Yeah.
He is desperate for that woman's attention. And very much like that. He is a good boy. You're right.
And when she chastises him for not considering the timing, his response is hilarious. He's like, like 3 times he tries to start talking and he like fumbling over his words. He's making weird noises, and it's really good acting. I thought it was.
It is. Like I say, it's like this is the most powerful human thing to ever walk, and he can't even put 2 words together here.
Right.
You know, and you're like, dude, this guy can crush mountains, And yet,
She's running circles around him.
this chick has got him just dangling. It's great.
He sits down on her couch and he changes the subject, and he asks, how could he have known about Compound V? And she says, we're not going to talk about it. And he pushes the issue, saying she doesn't need to hide things from him. He loves Vought as much as she does, and he can do more. And she says, do more? You've already grossed Vought $12.3 billion. It's all about the money, right? That's all. It's just a number.
I think that's the only thing that makes that woman happy for sure is the $12.3 billion.
Yep. His response is great. And he says, right, I'm quoting, right, so the pricks on 82 can have all the credit, empty suits with Cornell degrees, come on. And I love this characterization. And it's a good time for me to point out that in these conversations I'm having with you, I am very negative about corporations, or it may appear that way. And I'm not inherently anti-corporation. It's just that I don't like how most of them are being run nowadays. And
I agree.
It's really, I think, centered around the fact that the fiduciary responsibility they have to shareholders to maximize the profit comes at the expense of the long-term health of the company.
It does.
Yeah. And
I mean, and I agree. I think, a lot of people don't understand this, and this is, I'm like you. I may come across, I'm not anti-corporation, I'm not anti-capitalist, but a lot of people do bad things for making money, and like you said, they don't care about the people that work for them, and it's not their job to care for them, and it's not their job to lose money. But I feel that they could be some more care in how they run things,
right.
And that's not everybody.
To further the point is good CEOs are going to grow the company to make more profit in the long run anyway, right? It's really the bad ones that I'm focusing on, or not just CEOs, but just the executive leadership, right? Where they gut the company to temporarily drive up the price of the stock, and then they get their exit package, and then and then they're on to the next, and then the corporation, they laid off a bunch of people, they don't have the resources to support it anymore, and then it's gutted, and what are they going to do?
Figure this out.
Yeah. So there are exceptions, but lately it seems I don't know. It's just, if some of that negativity towards corporations comes through, this is what it's based on. That, and just the public piece where it's, managing perceptions and, having to put out statements about this, that, or the other to maintain perception
that
we care, but all they care about is the dollar on the stock.
I think the one thing that bothers me more than anything when people make these statements, we care. It's like, don't lie to me. I know that you only care about making the money. Tell me, at least have the nerve to tell me, you know what? I'm only in it for the money. It's like, I'll respect that. I can
That's not how the game is played, my friend.
I know. I watch South Park. Those guys keep me informed.
Yeah. Of course they do, man. We might have to get into those episodes at some point. I haven't watched it for a long time, but
have you seen the GoFundMe seasons?
No, I have not.
No. Oh my Lord, that's really, those guys are so prescient. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I'll have to
they're amazing. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Homelander continues on his little diatribe here. He's saying he's the one who's out there. He's the one who knows the audience, not the faceless suits from Cornell. He's the one that knows what's good for Vought. She tells him she hears him, but what she needs right now is for him to charm the shit out of those congressmen. Now, this I hear you thing is something that typically people will say when somebody's complaining about something, and it's just like to placate them, but you're not really doing anything to help them.
It's a parental move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying,
but
it's an enormous but. It's always a very large but. But I'm sorry. Continue.
And then he says, right, because that's all I'm good for, huh? Smile, look pretty, say my lines.
I know, say my lines and whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah. She really has the skill at manipulating him. And this next part really shows that. She was sitting on the far side of the couch, and she slides over to sit right next to him, and she puts her hand on his arm, and she says, no. You just need to let me protect you. And he looks at her and he says, oh, you're going to protect me? And then she's like, uh-huh. She puts her hand on his cheek and she says, gods are pure and they're perfect and they're above it all and they need to stay that way. She keeps her hand on his cheek for a long time and he's looking at her. And this is where it gets really creepy. You know, he's just, you can see that, like, the look in his eyes, right? He's definitely feeling some things here. And then he tells her that she's leaking through her shirt. And then she says, thank you. What are your thoughts on the way this conversation ends?
With her saying thank
Well,
you,
just in general, like the way she did
everything?
with the statement about the gods are pure, they're perfect, and the way she was manipulating him with her hand on his face and stuff like that.
Yeah, she was totally in control of the situation. But the statement, I love the gods are pure and they're perfect, they're above it all, has obviously never read any Greek mythology. Those guys are a bunch of deviant freaks. They're hilarious. I always enjoy Greek mythology, but her manipulation of Homelander is that's one of those. That's a classic move too. Touching someone while you're talking to them.
Particularly, like when it's a woman manipulating a man,
yes,
like that.
It's a woman manipulating man. It doesn't take a whole lot. We know what. Look, we're men. We understand. We're easily manipulated, dude.
Yeah. The reverse of that is not the same thing because women would be offended.
Yes,
you know, it's definitely this way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but you know, it's also a trick. I mean, I don't know if you ever watch me shake hands with people. There's a trick when you shake somebody's hand that you can touch their elbow at the same time. Dude, it makes them feel like they're very important, very close, very warm. She uses all these manipulation techniques on him.
Okay.
I mean, she's in his confidence.
Okay.
She's pulling him in close, showing him, hey, you know, it's all good between me and you. It's all cool, but
right. Here's what I need from you.
Yeah, but here's what I need from you. But it's like, I understand how you feel. I feel the same. But what we're going to say in real life is this. So so go out there, put your big bullet paint. Yeah, she's something else, dude.
She is
magnificent.
We go back to Butcher and his friends.
It is uncomfortable though. Oh,
that scene.
Their dynamic is very yes. Their dynamic.
Yeah.
It's always very. I mean, it's shot. It's got to be done deliberately. I mean, because every time you see them, it's always uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it gets worse as time goes on.
I think it does.
They kind of build it up because he started out so normal, and then it just gradually you begin to see what he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Okay.
Going back to Butcher and his friends, Huey needs a glass of water. He finds a glass in the restaurant, and of course, it has Homelander's graphic on it. He gets a notification on his phone and he sees he has about 72 missed calls from his dad.
That's a lot of calls.
Well, his dad's worried about him.
I know his dad's worried about him.
He steals himself and he calls his dad back.
Is Huey like 30?
I want to say he looks like he's in his high 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. The dad's freaking out when Huey calls him back since he heard about the damage to the store and was worried something had happened to Huey.
And that is true. It is his store. I'm so sorry. Sorry, Simon Pegg. I apologize.
The dad then digresses into watching a show on human trafficking, to which Huey responds, I haven't been human trafficked, okay? I closed up early. It must have happened after I left. And this was a pretty quick thinking on his part because I couldn't have come up with an excuse that good on that short notice. Do you think he had it planned, or do you think he's just that good at coming up with excuses?
You know, I don't know. What I had talked about is the fact that his dad doesn't pay attention. Maybe it's just one of those things he just tells his dad things all the time, knowing his dad's not paying attention.
This was just an incredibly a really good cover story, though.
It's a daggum good cover story, and I never looked at it that way till you pointed it out here. I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
I do like that I haven't been human trafficked. That's pretty
hilarious. Yeah, typical, Dad, I haven't been human trafficked, okay? His dad asked where he went, and Huey says he was drinking with Anthony, one of his friends. And his dad says, no, I called Anthony. I called everybody, and no one has seen you. And he says, Huey, don't lie to me. And Huey says it's hard to explain and that he has to go. And then his dad says,
I have a naked superhero tied up in a cage. I kind of got to go, Dad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, here's the truth, Dad. He'll be like, all right, why don't you just come back home when you're ready? Yeah. So the dad says he knows Huey has been taking his girlfriend's accident real hard. Huey interjects and says it wasn't an accident. And his dad continues saying, okay, well, whatever. My point is that you're a good boy, a sensitive boy, and to come home.
And this has only been, what, a week, maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Not 7 days, but like a 5-day work week, maybe.
Well, we're still, you said, a little bit ago, you thought it was about 3 days.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, dude, it's like just telling some guy, it's like, yeah, everyone winds up holding their girlfriend's stumps at some point. You get over it, move on. It's like, dude,
yeah,
cut Huey some slack, man. Come on.
And Huey doesn't take this well. He says he has to go and he hangs up on him. And Huey's an adult. His dad's calling him a boy. Maybe it's because he still lives at home and, based on his actions, he doesn't really think he's grown up yet. You think it's something like that?
It's something like that. I think his girlfriend touched around the edges on that a little bit, but with a lot nicer. But, yeah, I think so. Just he's staying at home. You see his bedroom is still decorated like when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
He's got all the 7 posters on his walls and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, dude, you're like at least 20 something. I can understand that if you're 18, but it's like you're old enough. It's like, do something. So, yeah, it could be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She saw it.
Yeah.
But she was nice. She was cool. She could lead him away in a good way.
Right.
Positive reinforcement.
After this call, Huey gets mad, really mad. And he's standing next to the wall and he starts punching it. So he punches it once hard. And I was cringing because they did such a good job of like emphasizing the impacts of his fists on the wall. And every time he punches the wall, it leaves bloody knuckle prints on the wall. And after he punches with his right hand once, he punches with his left hand once, and then he just repeated left, right. And I was really cringing here. It's just,
that's brutal. That's tough.
Yeah. And for someone that he doesn't seem like he's involved in martial arts or any type of fighting or anything really in his life, you can tell he's really going through some stuff.
Yeah. He's hurting, dude. That dude's hurting emotionally.
Yeah.
That guy could keep a psychiatrist well fed for a couple of years easily.
Yeah. We switch back to the Vought Tower, and the Deep is entering the command room for the 7. The doors open and reveal Homelander is the only soup in the room. He's sitting in his chair at the table. The Deep seems a little unsettled, and he says he heard there was a meeting, but he guesses not, and he tries to leave.
Now, do you hear that music that I'm talking about in that scene? When he enters that room and he sees Homelander, the music is like a record player dying down, dude.
I didn't notice that.
You ought to check it out. It's real funny because the music deflates like the Deep deflates in that scene. And it's like, whoa. And that's kind of scary because, again, Homelander. Yeah.
They do a good job of adjusting the mood of the scenes with the music, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Between the camera, what they're doing with the camera, the types of shots they're using, and then the music in conjunction with that, they're really manipulating the tone.
Yes, very much so. It's well done.
It is, yes. There's a couple of notes, scenes that I have where I note this later down. I'll bring them up when we get there.
Nice.
Homelander says, "We're having a meeting right now, you and me." And the Deep says, "Yeah, sure." Comes back into the room. Behind them, the doors thump shut with emphasis. It sounds like a thick door is closing. And he looks back, and now he realizes he's stuck in here with Homelander, and he looks scared.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. If these two fought, how do you think that would play out? He'd just get cut to pieces by...
Dude, it wouldn't last any time at all, but he'd be paced.
Yeah. I think that
Homelander would turn him into pace. He might get a lick in, and he might take a shot, which is be more than I could take.
Right.
But not much more. Yeah. I don't think.
I agree. It would be, he'd wipe the floor with him. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Well,
the Deep sits down in his seat and asks if
actually, I do have a comment on that.
Oh,
if you see my writing here, it's no different than Aquaman fighting Superman.
Did they ever fight each other?
Superman, no, but I'm just saying Superman appears to have a conscience. It seems to be the only difference is that, but yeah, Homelander would reduce this guy to his basic elements.
Yeah, I think he would.
That's all I got. Yeah. Absolutely, dude. He's got the heat vision. He can melt you down to slag.
Yeah. And he doesn't seem like he is that resistant to using it either.
No.
The Deep continues in and sits down in his seat and asks if there's anything he can do for Homelander. Homelander asks if he can help him understand something because maybe he's stupid. He then pointedly asks if he is stupid. Am I stupid? And the Deep's like, what? No, no, you're not stupid. You're smart. Very, very smart, right? Yeah, I mean the way he's talking, it's
Yeah.
great, man. Oh yes, you're very smart.
Oh, he's terrified, dude. I feel bad for him right there, dude.
Well, yeah, we don't like him because of he's such an to begin with, and it's good to see him
But I
squirm.
still, it is.
Homelander says, okay, so what possible reason, what razor sharp fish instinct made you run to Stillwell and tell her what you thought you saw down there? As he's speaking, he gets up and he walks behind the Deep, placing his hands on his shoulders and begins to massage his shoulders. So he's behind him. The Deep can't see him. And it's a menacing massage. It's not a friendly one. Let's just put it that way.
We sell a menacing massage. Guaranteed to leave you very uptight and freaked out, dude.
Yeah.
I don't see many takers, but I'm sorry. We will take.
Maybe we
I
make a
will not
t-shirt.
be giving
The
a
menacing massage. Make a t-shirt of it.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
The Deep is freaking out.
There's your logo.
Okay.
There's your logo.
Yeah.
The menacing massage. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
The Deep's freaking out. He can't even get a whole sentence out. He's stuttering. He claims he doesn't even know what he saw down there. It was dark and muddy. And he finishes apologizing twice. And he says he really didn't see anything down there, as a matter of fact. I don't know what I saw. It was dark. It was muddy. And I didn't see anything. Homelander laughs and says, that's what I thought. And he walks around the Deep's chair so they can actually look at each other. He puts his hand on his shoulder, but it's more closer to the neck than the shoulder. And you can see that his thumb is kind of resting on his neck, on the front of his neck. Yeah. So this is not a friendly shoulder pat. This is a.
I think he could flick that dude's head off of his shoulders.
Yeah, this is a. If I wanted to, I could, kind of take this grip and do something with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very intimidating.
It's horrifying, dude.
Homelander says to the Deep, he trusts that they will never need to have this conversation again. And the Deep says, no, of course not. Just this once. And Homelander laughs. He turns his back on the Deep and he walks to the windows overlooking the city. And he dismisses him, telling him to go F Shamu in the blowhole. I mean, you can tell he thinks he's a joke. Right? Dismissing him like
I'm sorry. I'm trying to regather my senses because that line right there just makes me laugh so hard. Because his disdain, the disdain for the fish guy,
the razor sharp fish instinct,
for the Deep is just really. There is none. There is no respect. There is no love. There's no like.
Yeah,
it's funny. You start feeling. I start feeling bad for the Deep at some points. Not really a lot, but sometimes I do, and that's one of those like, you're at least you're alive. At least you got to walk out of that confrontation. So,
well, how much of thinking about how he is, how much of his bad behavior do you think is related to this? It's like bullying, right? He's just constantly the brunt of so many jokes.
I believe a lot of that. I would not be surprised if the Deep has always, in particular, if the Homelander treats him like that, everyone else does because they have the right to. They think just like you said, it's like a bully at a school,
right? Homelander leads, and then everybody else thinks he's a clown.
They all follow. He's a clown, and they all dog up on this guy. So what should be a great thing for him is a nightmare in a weird way for him as well. And so I guess he takes it out.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
I'm not saying he's right.
His actions are not justified. I'm trying to understand how he got to that level. And
Homelander is obviously a ridiculous super bully.
Oh yeah,
he's a scary one. Oh my goodness, that's a horrifying. I mean, that whole scene. Even though we're laughing uncomfortably, mind you, we're laughing uncomfortably because it's really quite horrifying. It's not funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny at all, but it is when you talk about it because it's the way it's written. But man, those guys are great actors, man.
Yeah. Just the way
They sell it, dude.
the way the Deep was acting, he's like, "You're very smart."
You're very smart. Yes, precious. Oh my word, dude. Yeah, he's bad. Suck it up. Okay.
Yeah. We switch back to Frenchie, and we have this awesome little science engineering montage. There's music on, and he's seen creating a bullet that.
We get the South Park montage song when things go from bad to worse. It takes a montage.
Yeah.
Montage. Okay, sorry.
They cover this bullet, or he covers this bullet in the same material as translucent skin. The thought is, it takes a diamond to cut a diamond, so maybe if they take this carbon metamaterial, put it on a bullet, maybe it'll penetrate. And this is a big round. It's one of those 50 caliber BMGs.
It's enormous.
Huge. Right. I'd like to appreciate the fact that Frenchie brought a bunch of containers in a van to this abandoned restaurant and made carbon metamaterial to cover a bullet.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
I will definitely say big thumbs up to the Frenchie because that's amazing work. Yeah, we need this guy on our side. And I did right here. He is the guy. He's a bad dude. He's the MacGyver of the bunch, dude.
I agree with that. He hands this bullet to the butcher, who asks if it will work. Frenchie responds with, "I don't know," in French. Yeah, this is another one of those times where he speaks in French. I had to translate it.
I like that you've done that, though.
I want to know what he's saying, because there's something he says later. I was like, I had no idea. Well, this one I didn't know either. I knew the charcuterie. No, charcuterie. Yeah. They load the bullet into a gun, and Butcher begins walking in the room with it. And Huey comes around the corner as they're opening the door, and he begins to ask what they're doing. And Butcher doesn't slow down at all. He opens fire on translucent. The bullet bounces, ricochets all over the place, and embeds itself in the wall somewhere. Luckily, none of them were hit.
Yeah, that's real lucky.
Because it bounced several times. Translucent immediately begins mocking them, laughing at them, telling them they're dumb and he's invincible. Frenchie slams the door and the camera pans up to show that the special RF shielding from Fry's Electronics that they installed has been damaged.
The R foil. The R foil has been damaged
by the ricocheting bullet. So now there's a way for this signal to get out of the room.
Yeah.
Huey starts telling them, "Nice job, guys," sarcastically. And in this case, I don't think he was justified in criticizing them necessarily, because they had to try something. Otherwise, they're not going to know what works.
I like that the guys, Butcher and Frenchie, they don't even really say much. They just get to work.
Right.
And this is what we come up with. Now, it may not work, but here, they didn't even have a conversation about this. They just did it. They at least tried something like we talk about here. But it's like, dude, what are they going to do when they talk about it?
Well, I mean, they did have that little bit of brainstorming session, right? Where they're like, okay, can we suffocate? Can we electrocute? Then they got back to this. But then in terms of Frenchie comes up with the solution, right, of how he's going to solve it.
Yes. Yeah.
Butcher tells Frenchie he'll be back later. He has an idea. He's going to leave. And Huey's surprised that Butcher's going to leave them. And he says, well, it's all under control here. We got him in a cage. On his way out, Butcher kind of stops in the hallway. He appears a little torn, thinking about what he has to do. And then after a moment of reflection, he starts cussing. He's like, and then he heads out. He's not looking forward to this, it would appear.
Yes.
We go back to the Vought Tower, and Madeline is entering the crime analytics room. This is where Trevor works. And this is where all the soup tracking and crime stat and comp stat stuff's happening. There's screens all over the place. People are working at their desks. As she's walking through the room, people are dodging out of her way, in deference to her. She's very dressed up. This isn't normal business attire. They are hosting that Senate Appropriations Committee this evening. That's why she's dressed up. She walks up to a worker named Annika, who compliments her, telling her she looks nice. And Madeline wants to know where Translucent is. She's checking up on this situation. Annika says they just started receiving responses from his chip about 5 minutes ago, and that he's in Jersey City.
Now, at this point, is this where that kid Trevor walks in and sees her and turns around and walks out?
I think I don't remember specifically, but I do kind of remember that, seeing that.
I think it's kind of funny because he kind of just dipped out.
Go ahead, sorry. Eyes get all big and he's like, "Oh, I'm out."
Look, I'm not.
Sorry, Annika.
Yeah, you're on your
Peace.
own.
Yep. Madeline asks what the hell Translucent's doing there. They don't know. And Annika continues, they can pinpoint his location within a 10-block radius, but they can't get much more accuracy due to either a chip malfunction or some type of interference. Madeline instructs Annika to have security sweep the area door to door discreetly, and she also sarcastically adds that it shouldn't be that hard because he's invisible. What are they going to see? Yeah.
I know that's. Yeah.
It's like they need Ghostbusters ghost tracking devices to find his chip or something, you know?
I think some of it just shows her disdain for the soups, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, she generally keeps a very even persona, right?
Yes.
She's very in control. Yeah.
But I'm just kind of curious if that was just one of those things where she says that just kind of like, it can't be that hard. It's invisible. It's like, you know, like, do I got to do all your thinking for you? It's like, come on. So like I said, I don't know if it's like a look down upon these people. Yeah, they may have superpowers, but they're kind of a bunch of idiots. Right.
We go back to Starlight and the Deep on their team up. They're standing on a boat, and the Deep is going on and on and on about this. He only gets called when there's a water crime. He's going on about every variation of water feature. Yeah, water adjacent crime. He goes on about every water feature, river, stream, bay, you know, whatever. He gets, exactly. And he's just talking.
He does not mention a fjord. He does not mention fjords.
Yeah. He just says they call him whenever they want him to dive in the water and flash his biceps on Instagram. And what else would he be good for, though? Right?
No, nothing.
What's he gonna do? Punch somebody otherwise? I mean, it doesn't make sense to have him there. Yeah, talk to fish. There you go. Yeah. But he does say he's.
Are fish interesting?
I don't know. I've never talked to one.
I may talk to them, but I don't know what they're saying to me. I think I get a better response from my cat sometimes. She will at least respond.
You might be able to get me to try to communicate with a cephalopod. Yeah. Okay. They're pretty smart. Yeah.
All right.
The Deep does mention he's getting 4 million hits a day on Instagram, which is pretty good.
That's a lot. That's pretty good.
The thing that I would like to point out,
3.99999 more million than we've gotten so far. So I'm not hating.
Just got to work on the biceps. You'll be all right. Maybe work on your dive into the ocean.
We need to find some water adjacent crimes happening for me to attend, and we'll be good.
I want to point out he's also acting completely normal, as if he didn't do anything to Starlight. Just acting like there's no issue here whatsoever. Starlight's ignoring him. He turns to her and says, "What's your problem? You had that pissy look on your face all night." And the lights start to flicker. She's not having this, right?
Nope.
He says, "Is this about the other night? Cry me a river. I took my share of when I first got here, okay?" I doubt he had to do anything like what he made her to do. And at most, he's getting clowned on by everybody else for him being a joke, but it's not even comparable, right? And he adds, "Besides, you had a crush on me, remember?" And this really sets her off. She starts yelling at him, telling him he had no right to do what he did. He's a pathetic asshole. And he begins to pop off at her, telling her to shut her mouth. And then she says, "Or what? You're going to sick a grouper on me?" He threatens to tell everyone she's a psycho. He'll run to Homelander like a little tattletale. She stops him and says, "No, you won't." And she says, "I asked around, and I know you're not number 2 in the 7. You're just the fish guy. And everybody thinks you're a joke." And she thinks he's a joke most of all. And she can't believe he fell for his crap. He tries to threaten her again, and she gets real serious. I really like this. Her eyes start glowing, and she tells him that if he ever touches her again, she'll burn his eyes out.
I love that.
I mean, it's really cool because like her eyes, like when they start glowing like that, and the lights, all the lights around the area start flickering. It's very,
looks awesome,
very serious.
She looks awesome when her eyes all glowed out like that. Is awesome.
She asks if he understands her. He doesn't get a chance to respond since the bad guys show up in their van. Probably right on time for their itinerary.
For the crime itinerary. You know, I'm going to have to say it because it's just killing me to not say this. We are both South Park fans, And you know the Super Best Friends
Mhm.
episode, right? Do you know that one with
It's been
David
a long
Blaine?
time since I watched it, so I'm probably not going to remember any specifics.
It's
Oh
Seaman
yes, I remember.
is
Yeah,
is,
I remember that.
is so that's all I can ever think
Mhm.
of with when I think of the deep is
Mhm.
Seaman. So
Mhm.
so sorry. There we go.
Yeah.
There's my Aquaman joke. I'm not going to mess with Aquaman. That dude looks like he could kill me. The new Aquaman looks a little bit more
He
serious.
does.
So
These bad guys, they're in a van going into the warehouse at the dock. The Deep says, "We'll finish this later." In relation to the mission, he tells her she should go in the front. He'll swim around and come in the back. And
right.
this part, he does this epic backwards dive off the boat. This is what we were talking about earlier. The musical score is swelling, and then like it just goes away, and there's like a little silent little bloop when he goes in the water. It's like they played it up, and then nothing.
I need to rewatch this.
And it's funny because in terms of a dive, it was a good dive, right? Because in the Olympics,
beautiful dive.
the smaller your splash, the better your entry, generally the higher score you're going to get, right? Along with the complexity of the dive.
And who's going to have a better dive than the fish guy? Sorry.
I don't know. Maybe Jason Statham. He used to be a diver.
I did not know that. I thought I knew that he was into like real. Isn't he really into like kickboxing or something like that?
He does martial arts. I'm not sure what kind he
does,
does, but he was a diver. Yeah.
Okay, far out. Man, I love Jason Statham.
So
he's
you
never
can
recovered
have
from the.
You can have cool divers, is what I'm getting at.
What's funny now you've brought it. You've brought the segue around naturally because you know Jason Statham was always in the Guy Ritchie films.
Yes.
And I was talking about Anthony Starr, the guy that plays Homelander, getting in trouble. He was making a Guy Ritchie movie when he assaulted this 21-year-old chef, I think in Spain.
Okay.
And he was actually almost going to be doing some jail time, but apparently they got him out of jail time. But so you brought it up. I had to link that together there some way. So I forced that segue in there just shoehorned it in there.
Is that Guy Ritchie movie out yet?
I don't think so.
I wonder if it's one of his.
Looked.
I like his English gangster movies.
Dude, did you watch The Gentleman?
Oh,
that's the last. That's the last.
I like Charlie Hunnam. So that was.
You like
Charlie Hunnam, the actor? Jax from what's it called? What's the motorcycle show? Sons of Anarchy. Yeah.
I haven't watched that show. I've been encouraged. Someone has been trying to encourage me to watch that show, so I guess maybe I should get on board.
Brutal.
Okay, I can take it.
It's really a good drama. It's a and soap opera.
Right.
Yeah. I never watched
Breaking Bad on motorcycles.
A little bit of that. It's just it's dark. Well, we might have to go through that a little bit. Maybe.
My show from FX was Justified. I'm a Timothy Olyphant guy, dude. I love that guy.
That show made me like him. Raylan Givens.
Raylan Givens, and I love Walton Goggins.
Oh, he's a great actor.
His buddy Boyd is amazing. What an amazing actor. Right. Okay, I'm so sorry,
man. This episode is going to be like 2.5 hours long.
I know it. I apologize.
That's not your fault. I have been the cause of several of these. That one was mine, I think.
I like how we're talking a lot more though. Our conversation is becoming more. Hey, what about this?
Yeah. Well, we need the stay on target button more than ever.
Damn it! I was looking for that this week, and all I could find was memes.
Yeah. We'll get it in there eventually. Yep. Okay. After the dive, we don't see him anymore. The Deep. And then we go into the warehouse, and the criminals are using the Homelander cuddle plushies to smuggle in some types of drugs. And this is the point that I wanted to bring back up. When you said earlier, are we sure that these criminals aren't involved with Vought in some way? And this does not necessarily confirm that, but it adds credence to that suspicion in some way. They have to have access to these cuddle plushies, right?
It would what's funny is it wouldn't have to be any really drugs. All they want is the publicity for it. Mm-hmm. So many people believe that people can just say things and they think it must be the truth. So I think a lot of people believe that. And I think this show says that a lot.
And they have their own news channel. They're going to say what they want anyway.
Yeah. That's right. So it could all be just for their entertainment, just to keep their stock looking good.
Right.
Because I can't think of anything I've seen them do that looks honorific or honorable, except for saving the boys in the first episode.
So far, yes.
That's the only the only honorable thing they've done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But their behavior behind the things is, they're not very likable people. That's a fact.
Right.
I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. No, I was just thinking about that. I was thinking through each of them, and generally speaking, all of them have their problems. All right, back to the fight. Starlight surprises the criminals and quickly blasts two of them using her energy. The remaining criminals try to escape out the back, and the Deep is there waiting for them. He quickly subdues them. Now, to your point, Billy, about his strength, when we spoke about in the last episode, he does seem to hit pretty hard. He flips one of those
Right.
guys over backwards when he hits him. So,
Sure. I'm assuming,
yeah.
like, again, I always make these assumptions about the underwater guys. We give these fellows a hard time, but it takes a lot of strength to live underwater or to be able to, to take the pressures. And so I'm assuming the guy's got some super strength on land.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. As soon as the fighting is over, a camera crew shows up with Ashley. It's almost like Bad Boys when they would follow the cops around.
I haven't seen that, so I don't know the reference. I mean, I know the movie. I know
The
what you're talking
show,
about
the TV show that was kind of
it. Oh,
based
the
on.
cops. Oh,
Yeah,
cops. Okay.
it's Cops. I don't know why I thought it was Bad Boys. Yeah, kind of
Well,
like
it's the
Cops. Yeah,
song.
yeah, yeah. That's right.
There's the song.
All right. Yeah.
But,
Maybe Will Smith was in my mind
that
lately.
could be.
Who
Well,
knows why?
that could very well be. That
Yeah.
could be. He has been on everyone's mind here lately.
Mhm.
That poor guy.
Yeah. Starlight is surprised to see this camera crew. Ashley tells her she was great, points to a body on the ground, and says, stand over him and say, "This is lit."
That's just so bad.
Very
That's
cringy.
That's totally cringy. Whew.
Yep.
Ouch.
Starlight does not like this. She's looking around. She looks over and sees the Deep talking to one of the other cameramen. And he's asking if he caught the dive into the water. Now, just a couple minutes ago, he was complaining about them asking him to dive in the water and flash his biceps.
Right.
Now he's like, "Did you catch the dive?"
Chris Dunn. I
Yep.
love how you voice the Deep when he's like feeling sad. Sorry, I love it. But yeah, did you catch that dive? And well, the funny thing for me is that that in some shows you'll see the press show up. The press did not show up. They were just there.
Yeah. As soon as the danger was gone, they showed themselves.
Yeah.
So they were there in hiding.
Yes. So I think it's all staged. I think it's all staged.
Ashley is telling Starlight to smile at the camera. Starlight is not looking very happy, right? You can tell this is not what she thought it was going to be. I think it's not genuine. It seems fake to her. And I don't know if she's processing it this way yet, but it feels like it's breaching kind of her values and principles to me. What do you think?
There could be a lot of that to it. I have to imagine that I put on my feelings about this and think that, okay, dude, you're doing the crime fighting back home and you're excited when you do it because it's cool. But then you get called into the big leagues. It's like being called to join the Justice League and think you're going to go take down some bad dudes and have a great time doing it. And it's like, no, there's no fun in it. It's all scripted. She's very disillusioned by, I think, everything. It's coming to a head real quick with her.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, she's been put in the fire pretty quick.
Real quick.
Yeah. We transition to Butcher. He has broken into the house of someone named Susan that he used to work with. She is now the director of operations at the CIA. He congratulates her on her promotion, and this scares the crap out of her because it's the middle of the night. He's broken into her house. She's carrying a gun around. He's lucky that she didn't shoot him.
Yeah, absolutely. She's a pro.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. And then they're standing in her kitchen. He's asking to look at some files that she has on the soups, specifically translucent.
Yeah.
She wants to know why he broke into her house in the middle of the night to see these files. It's a little suspicious, no?
Yeah. What is with everyone breaking into everyone's house with or without clothing? In the middle of the night, restrooms, all this stuff. Sorry. Showing a lot of skulking around in the show.
Yeah, there's a lot of. And he tells her he's trying to find a way to do the job on him And if
Good
it's
job.
anywhere, it'll be in Mallory's files. We don't know who Mallory is yet. I believe this is the first time that name is mentioned in the show, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure if that's also maybe first episode the name came up, possibly. I can't guarantee that, but I have another. I don't know if you see my note there. Mallory is one of these people that we talk about for a while before we introduce her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's done in a great movie with Orson Welles, where we talk about Orson Welles for the first half of the movie. He's never there, and then all of a sudden he shows up. So it's kind of that same thing. We're going to talk about Mallory for a while before we bring her on the show.
Was it similar in Apocalypse Now with the Marlon Brando character?
Kind of. It's a little, because in Third Man, it's right after World War II, and so it has to deal with black market and some other police matters. So it's a little different than that. It's not like having someone go native.
Okay. Well, I meant more from the aspect that I think it was a while in Apocalypse Now before you actually saw Marlon Brando's character,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah. It's like the last, what, 30, 40 minutes of the movie at the most, maybe. Yeah. And we talk about it the whole time, too. Yeah. It's a very similar idea, though. Yeah.
When Butcher tells Susan here that he wants to do the job, we can assume that's killing him, right? And she would know that.
Yeah. It's something that because we know that Frenchie and then they talk about taking care of Soups, but I think Frenchie was very specific, not necessarily about killing them, but just about incapacitating them.
Right. That's his area of specialty, his niche.
Yeah, but he can incapacitate while someone kills him too,
Right.
So, but yeah, obviously some kind of code for getting rid of, euphemism for termination.
Right.
The job.
So after he explains this, he asks if she would like him to keep talking. She says, no, don't say another word. She doesn't want any more information. She says the Mallory files are dead and buried. He thinks she can dig them up based on her new position. And she counters saying, no, she can't, because something Butcher did in the past. The director of the CIA will fire anyone that goes near those files. Apparently, Butcher made it suicide to go after the Soups. And then she asks, why is he involved in this? Does he have a death wish, or is he a glutton for punishment? A bit of both, he supposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very driven man. We'll find out more about his motivations, I want to say, next 2 episodes, probably. Yeah.
He could also be a bit unsavory, even though he's our hero, one of our heroes.
Yeah, the anti-hero component, right?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. He still tries to convince her to go get the files, leaning on some past history they had. Now, at this point in time, she has a husband and a child. Apparently, she and Butcher used to have relations together. It's not mentioned whether she was married at that time. She does tell him that she doesn't look back fondly on that time. And then she says, are you really trying to sell this? You kind of, using that past relationship as leverage. And he says, well, we had a few good laughs. And then she mentions the time when he sent her an edible arrangement. Apparently she was not impressed by that. I wonder what that was about.
I'm real curious about why he was not impressed with the edible arrangement.
Right. She knows that he was trying to use her as a get out of jail free card, just like he's doing now. Like, she knows that relationship in the past was him setting up something like this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And we've talked about this a number of times, but it's just the way he collects people around him. Yeah. And I don't know how he gets them to follow him, because it's almost like he repeatedly lies or does something that they shouldn't trust him.
And look at Frenchie. I mean, and I agree with you. It's like he sees people as uses and roles, but Frenchie's one that obviously, he owes the guy $40K, but he's willing to do things for Butcher, even though that Butcher owes him money. Butcher can obviously deliver. It's the only thing I can say about about him. He obviously delivers on what he does.
He must be selling this. They all must have some grievance, and that's got to be the underlying core thing that lets them follow him. The grievance with the Soups, right?
I believe that we do. Something comes up with this, and it is, if I'm not mistaken, it'll have to do with Lamplighter. some incident with him is why they all have such a bad taste in their mouth. But I don't know what. But you got to imagine, like Butcher was talking about with Huey about the fact that there's imagine the collateral damage. There's got to be a lot of collateral damage going on here.
Yeah. Butcher has a great comeback after Susan mentions the edible arrangement. He says, I'm going to quote him here. He says, well, if that's all it was, then what's got you so hot and bothered when a simple you would suffice? She looks at him for a moment, and I feel she looks hurt
I think she
by
does.
what he just said. And then she says, you, and then tells him to get out of her house. I do pick up that she still has some level of fondness for him. You know, he's aggravating, but I think she cares about him
but
still.
Effective person, I'm assuming. And I think you're right. There is, and I'm assuming, like anything to do with military or Secret Service, any of this law enforcement where you put yourself on the line for other people, it builds a relationship whether you like somebody or not. It's not a matter, you don't have to like somebody, you have to be able to trust somebody.
Yes, I agree with that. The bonds of brotherhood, as it were, through service. Yeah. Butcher tries one final time to convince her, asking, did I mention this is life or death? She responds by saying, well, I'll be sure to send an edible arrangement to your funeral. And then I guess this is, reciprocation for him sending her an edible arrangement in the past.
I'm assuming it's some inappropriate moment in her life.
Must have been. Had to have been. Maybe he was breaking up with her or something. Who knows?
Maybe it was a funeral.
We go back to Huey. Maybe it was a funeral. Yeah. Huey is being compassionate. He is bringing a glass of water to Translucent. Translucent is still invisible. He picks up the glass, and as he's drinking it, the water is disappearing into him. It's pretty cool looking. Huey is trying this kind of good cop scenario. He's trying to ask questions about A-Train on the day his girlfriend was killed, and he wants to know where A-Train was going and what he was doing. Translucent asks who she was to Huey, guessing it's a family member or a wife maybe. And when Huey mentions that she was his girlfriend, Translucent can't believe that this is what all of this is about. And he's like, why do you think I would know anything about that? And Huey has the impression that Translucent and A-Train would have been friends because they came up together. He further tries to convince Translucent to talk because the other two people that are with Huey are trying to kill him, and perhaps he could talk them down. Translucent doesn't buy this. He uncloaks himself, and I think this is the first time we've seen him uncloak since they took him down. And and Huey can see him now, and they're looking at each other. Translucent tells Huey that his superpower isn't invisibility, it's reading people. He watches them when they don't think they are being watched, and he sees what they do. There you go. He's a voyeur. You mentioned it a couple of times. What do you think he finds out about people when he's watching them in the bathroom?
I don't know. That's the one that bothers me. I can understand people talking to other people when, like, let's say me and you are out having dinner and we talk about something versus, I'm not going to be talking about the same thing in the restroom with you. It's going to be, how about them Cowboys?
Yeah.
We're not to share a life. We're men. We don't share life lessons at a urinal. We don't look. We just focus on the job and get out. I don't know what he's trying to focus on there. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think he's gaining much insight into people in the restroom.
I think you're correct.
Yeah, he's just being a pervert.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's just your run of the mill pervert. Yeah, sorry, super powered pervert, I guess.
Yeah. As these two are talking, we see Frenchie keeping guard in the restaurant, and he's looking out the window. He sees Vought security show up in like a black SUV, and they're searching the area for Translucent as Madeline ordered them to.
Right.
Translucent continues to talk to Huey, talking about how he can tell Huey is trying to act tough, but internally he's terrified because he's way in over his head and he can tell. The Vought security team is about to begin searching the restaurant. You can see the flashlights on they're kind of shining on the windows. They're doing kind of a sweep of the alley outside. Back inside, Translucent continues to work on Huey. He's telling him he kind of feels bad for him. His girlfriend just died, and people do crazy shit when their hearts are broken. He's telling Huey that his every instinct is telling him to run, and he should listen to it.
Do you believe that Translucent, that even though he's a scumbag, is one of the few people to actually tell him, we do crazy things when people that we love die? That's the only humanizing thing that anyone has ever really said to Huey, with his girlfriends being brutally killed. It sounds like, or feels like to me.
Yeah, his dad really didn't.
No, I'm sure his dad offered some comfort, but he's always got that real deprecating kind of, well, I understand that, she meant a lot to you. She meant a lot to you. Kind of, it's like, obviously you don't have an idea if you're going to keep using that phrase, she meant a lot to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously the girl, she was your son's paramour. She meant something to him.
Mm-hmm.
Meant something more than just a lot to you, I think. I would think you'd hope that his dad would know, but
Yeah, we get further into that relationship in the later episodes, kind of going along with some of the stuff we were talking about earlier with the dad and how he views Huey.
That's true.
But yeah, going back to your point about, he certainly hasn't. Butcher has not given him anything. Absolutely not. He didn't get anything from Vought.
No.
And he didn't tell Starlight about the girlfriend. He just told a story about her. So yeah, this may be, even if Translucent is trying to manipulate him, it may be one of the few people that has kind of talked to him about it.
Expressed condolences to him. Yeah, exactly.
I guess the question I would have is,
okay, cool.
does he mean it, or is he simply trying to manipulate him into letting him out?
I think it's a little of both. A good manipulator will use things, that they can use, and try and be sincere about it. So at least that's my thinking on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We never really get to see. Well, I'm not going to say much more.
Yeah, right.
All right. Huey responds by saying, "Unless we kill you first." And Translucent scoffs.
Yeah.
He says he has invulnerable skin. He's a superhero. He fights gangs and terrorists. Him and the Seven, they save the world daily. He stood in front of 1,000 fans. Now, he continues, this statement right here, it tells us everything we need to know about how the Supes are viewing the average populace.
Absolutely.
And I'm quoting here. He says, "Who are you? A water balloon filled with blood and meat." He laughs and continues, "Homelander's going to find me. And when he does, he's going to burst you wide open. I'm going to make it home in time for cocktails, because that's who you are and that's who I am. You're not the hero of this story, and I'm not the one who's trapped." What are your thoughts on that?
On the what about who's trapped, or just the whole statement?
So let's break it into two parts. The first is his characterization of a water balloon filled with blood and meat.
What's funny, this is not the first comic book guy to list this. Alan Moore has done this same kind of list, but he's very true. When you show a guy like Superman flying through people, and we're just like bugs on the windshield, I mean, and it's not doing anything to the person who's doing the flying through. The person being flown through, of course, that's all they're going to ever see. But how we are just, we're just, and even A-Train says it in that video, talk about, about swallowing that girl's molar. It's like a bug on a windshield kind of deal, so they very much see us as just bugs. If that.
Right.
If that.
Yeah, true. All right. So the second part of this, when he's saying he's not the one who's trapped, you agree with that sentiment in terms of Butcher and company? They're kind of trapped in their position based on what's going on.
They are. At the moment, they're trapped. They're very trapped. They've got a soup that has a homing device in them that is pinging, and they're not aware of that they have allowed some of his signal to leak through their fine Fry's electronic foil. Um, and but they're in a very deadly situation. I mean, they're getting ready to do some kind of shenanigans here. As a matter of fact, we're coming up on. I don't want to say too much to jump the gun, but yeah, I think they're
Yeah.
very trapped in this scenario. They're very trapped.
Yeah, I agree. On a side note, I like the way the scene was filmed. It's filmed through the mesh of the cage and is
Right.
slowly zooming in on Translucent as he's talking. And eventually you get past the mesh and you only see his face. I just thought it was a well shot scene. It
It's a
was
nice
pretty
scene.
cool.
It is.
Yeah. Huey looks at Translucent for a while after he has this little statement. And then he says, well, good luck. I tried. And then we see the Vought security team. They smash a window and they do a cursory search to see if it appears that anyone has been in the restaurant. They see nothing and leave. The first point I'd like to bring up here is I like how they have no issues just smashing private property windows. None at all. Right? This is a
I
private
know it, but
security team.
it's like just turn your head to the right a little bit, dude. Just
Yeah, Frenchie was right there next to
It's
him.
right there.
Right?
It's right there, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And then the second point is, what are you going to see with that flashlight? If Translucent is
exactly.
invisible, what are you going to see? I guess you could see signs that somebody had been there, but I mean, realistically, it just seems like a waste of time. But
It is a waste of time.
they were
these
ordered
guys
to
are
do it.
secure. Exactly. They're not going to go back
Mhm.
saying we didn't do it.
Right. Huey leaves the freezer that's containing Translucent, closes the door, and he's processing this conversation that he just had. And there's no doubt he's scared, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He
And
turns
rightfully
around
so.
and yeah, he turns around and he sees a poster above the sink in the restaurant and it has a baby on it with a bowl of spaghetti dumped on its head. The caption reads, "Keep your hands clean." That's certainly an interesting thing for him to see at that point in his life, right? Because
It
he's
is. It
struggling
is.
with this idea that they're going to try to kill Translucent and he's not a killer.
And I love that poster. That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
That kid
Yeah.
covered in spaghetti is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. And then on a side note, who sold their baby to a photo shoot to have the bowl of spaghetti dumped on his head?
I noted here it's probably Starlight's mother.
I love it. That is the exact type of person. Because how are you going to take that picture? Like, seriously, the baby will do it by itself. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong, right? But to have it in a professional photo shoot so it goes on a poster, come on. Somebody sold their baby to take that
Somebody sold their
picture.
children.
Yeah. All right. It's nighttime now.
Sorry,
We get a
I'm
beautiful
reminded
fly.
of Blues Brothers. Did you ever? You've seen Blues Brothers, haven't you?
It's been a long time.
He walks over to the women in the restaurants, like the little girls. How much for the women? How much for the little girls? So it's those guys are buying your children for ads. Sorry.
Yep. We get a beautiful flyby shot of the New York City skyline at night as we transition to the party that Madeline is hosting. The soups are mingling with the Senate Appropriations Committee members. There's a screen on the wall, and it's playing a promo video from a nonprofit organization named Samaritan's Embrace. We see the soup Ezekiel speaking about how the kids in the video have food, a ventilated cooking area, and a laptop thanks to the organization. And he's soliciting donations for this nonprofit. A quick reminder here, he is the soup that we saw getting freaky in the bar in episode 1.
Yes.
He was doing some stretching stuff. I'm not sure
Yes.
exactly what his powers are, but yeah, he was doing some real interesting contortion activity there.
Plastic Man kind of guy, I guess.
Yeah. Reed Richards.
Yeah. If used properly, it can be very powerful if you know how to do it.
We see a shot of Black Noir sipping a drink through a straw through his face covering. A server is walking by with hors d'oeuvres. he tries to reach for it, and she doesn't even pay attention, just kind of dodges and walks by. How's he going to eat anything off that? Is he just going to like try and shove it through? I mean, he's
I
not going to
don't
lift his
know.
mask up, probably. Yeah, that's
And there, the more that I watch this, the more these small weird mannerisms you catch from light noir that
yeah.
you probably didn't catch the first time through.
Madeline's making the rounds in the party. She's glad handing all the attendees. She walks up to the bar and begins speaking with a senator who is the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He's drinking whiskey, and she tells him they have some fancy whiskey that I assume is expensive.
Right.
And his response actually kind of like he says, "You'd be wasting it. Whiskey's whiskey to me." He looks out to the party, and there are these three older male senators speaking with Maeve. The one that's standing at the bar, he says that they're blowing so much smoke up her ass, it's a miracle she doesn't die of lung cancer. And I just thinking, these dirty old men, just
There's your tax dollars hard at work, America.
the senator continues to tell Madeline that it's all smoke. These senators, they love to bask in the glow of the soups, but when they're in the Appropriations Committee meeting, none of them are going to vote to outsource national defense to Vought. Madeline says, God forbid we could have an advantage in an armed conflict. And his response is, if any soup goes over the 38th parallel, North Korea would launch a nuke. Madeline says one of her guys would catch it, assuming he's in the area to do so.
Right.
Yep. And the senator goes on to mention that many of the senators have constituents that either produce weapons, or they're in states where weapons are produced, or there's military bases located amongst their voting populace. And then he goes on, America runs on weapons. It's one of the only things we still make. I actually like that comment, given we've offshored practically everything else.
Practically everything else, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, I'm proud that we make good firearms. I've got no problem with this.
Yeah. I think, it's more than that, though, right? The military industrial complex, all the, yeah. It's a lot of stuff. She pointedly asked him where he stands on the issue. He says he's just an old leatherneck and it would scare the shit out of him if Homelander was there on the battlefield. Again, Madeline says her heroes are the most loyal, patriotic, and she's not allowed to finish because the senator interrupts her with another point. And he says, that's just it. They are your heroes, not America's heroes.
Yeah, and I really like that point too, because it's a very crucial, that's a very crucial statement right there.
Yes. Madeline doesn't feel like she's getting anywhere with this, so she tells the bartender to get him the expensive whiskey and says, why have average when you can have extraordinary? As the bartender is preparing his glass, the senator and her are kind of eyeballing each other a little bit.
Right. A little bit.
Yeah. I didn't think much of it on the initial watch through, but we'll come back to that in a minute.
No.
We switch to Starlight, and she's walking home at night. She's in her normal clothes, in her incognito outfit. She sees a girl that is about to get assaulted by two guys. It's kind of in a dark alley, and Starlight interrupts the gentleman. They're not gentlemen, and then saves the girl.
Right.
She goes off running. It appears that somebody has filmed the whole thing from an apartment that's nearby.
Was that from an apartment, or was it just a camera that was like in the alleyway there?
It looked like somebody was filming it from a phone. Okay. It was a real short scene, but it looked like they were like on a second story looking down through a window, and it looked like a camera phone.
Okay.
A cell phone. Back to Huey. He has his hands over his ears. Something loud's happening in the freezer. Frenchie comes out cussing about diamond skin, and he's holding what appears to be some type of auger, like an industrial.
It's a heck of an auger, dude. That's a
yeah. It's the drill bit's probably 2 feet long.
Yeah.
I wonder how he was able to get that through the bars without electrocuting himself. I never thought about that. I realized that.
We'll come back. We're going to come back to the bars.
Yeah.
Because there's two problems I have with that scene, so we'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He tries to give Huey a pill that has LSD and MDMA to help take down his anxiety levels, and Huey thanks him
Acid and
and
ecstasy,
declines.
nice. Yeah.
And he
I said
says,
acid and ecstasy. Thank you.
he says, now is probably not the time for him to take a major hallucinogen.
I agree with him. Huey's
Yep.
not built for this.
Mm-hmm.
Huey's
Frenchie
not built
pops
for
it in his
acid.
mouth and says the equivalent of knock yourself out in French.
I love Frenchie. Again,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have to just have that as a button too. I love Frenchie. We're going to keep saying I love Frenchie
Mm-hmm.
through this show. I love Frenchie.
Yeah. Huey asks what exactly Frenchie does. Frenchie explains he knows a little bit about a lot of things. He's a gun runner by trade, but he has developed a certain niche. Huey asks if it's killing supes, but Frenchie says no. You can count on one hand the number of dead superheroes. He specializes in incapacitating them. He goes on to say they are magnificent creatures, each with a unique power that requires a unique solution. It's never the same twice. Huey wants to know who pays him to do that, and Frenchie says whoever can pay. Huey goes into what it's like to kill a supe or anyone. Frenchie goes into this long, detailed story about a woman that he met in an elevator. He fully
I like
describes her
this.
appearance, her outfit, her description, her hair, but then he remembers that she had dirt under her fingernails, and he thought that it was so different than all the other details about her because she was so put together in all other aspects
Right.
of her appearance. Then he finishes saying he remembers all this because she was the first person he ever killed.
Yeah.
And then he says, he continues, he says, he carries them all with him like scars.
Like scars. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Butcher is outside in the hallway listening to this. That was a pretty powerful scene, I think.
It is a very powerful scene.
Yeah.
So I like the the more that we get to know the other people, not just Butcher and Huey, but like Frenchie, I always enjoy those, all that stuff. And the more that we get to know about them is way more fun.
Right. We go to a hotel room where the senator, that's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, is about to do the business with the bartender from the party.
Mm-hmm.
She's got him tied up and she blindfolds him. We watch this bartender transform into this rather sweaty, large man. And this struck me, the reversal here, where
Right.
Mystique in X-Men, you have like supermodels playing her, right? And then the natural form is that, and then transforms into something else. And then in this case, it's the exact reverse. You got like a model kind of appearance of the bartender transforming into not
Fat, sweaty white guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very uncomfortable scene. Yes.
It is. The man, he takes pictures of himself with the senator so Vought can later blackmail him. It's dirty, buddy. Yeah. Starlight is walking the hall in Vought Tower, and she comes upon Homelander staring at a portrait of himself in the hallway. She addresses him, and he kind of breaks out of his little trance that he's in, and he asks how she is. She says good, and she tries to continue walking on. He asks if she is dressed as her secret identity, and she confirms that she is, and he thinks it's charming. He mentions that he gave up on his a long time ago. So he only embodies Homelander as a persona. There is no other aspect of him at this point.
Yeah, there is no Clark Kent type guy. There is just Homelander.
Right. She says she thinks she is going to go to sleep and wishes him good night. So she's not really interested in carrying on a conversation with him at this point. But it looked like he wanted to talk to somebody at that point in time.
He's
and
Homelander is a very interesting character. Yeah, I really like that. I really like as we get to know him better. He's terrible, but he's still kind of interesting though.
Yeah, interesting character study for sure.
Absolutely.
We then see why he's staring at this portrait. The camera recreates his X-ray vision and hearing, and we see he's staring at Madeline sitting at her desk, and she's speaking on her telephone while she's pumping. You can kind of see his obsession with her, right? And it's basically the camera's looking right at him, and his eyes, they're very expressive here.
Yeah.
And almost like a desperation. I don't know.
Yeah, he's yeah. Well, we don't see him ever really have any interaction with people. He's either telling them what to do or being told what to do by her. But, he doesn't seem to have a whole lot of personality to him, at least not that we're ever really shown much, at least so far.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Kind of lonely, even though he's such a bad dude.
Yeah, well, you can see he probably doesn't have a lot of friends, if any.
Right. Absolutely not. Who would want to hang out with him?
Right.
It's dangerous. I'm assuming it's dangerous hanging out with that fella. He's strung so hot.
I would
and cold.
think so. If you upset him, he can do very bad things to you.
Yes, very, very bad things to you.
Yeah. We go back to Butcher and crew. He is playing with the auger. Frenchie shakes his head and Butcher drops it. There is a documentary about tortoises on the TV in the room they're in. Frenchie begins to have an idea crystallize.
Yes, he does.
He gets the cattle prod and he goes to shock Translucent because he needs him unconscious for whatever he's about to do. We transition back to Starlight. She's brushing her teeth in the world's greatest communal bathroom. And Ashley...
Absolutely.
Ashley barges in and she goes, "What the Starlight?" She shows Starlight the recording of her subduing the two men in the alley. Ashley tells her she's so glad she did it in plain clothes so she could blow her secret identity. Yeah, she's being sarcastic, of course.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Somebody in the video recognized Starlight from high school and mentioned hashtag she was bulimic. Ashley goes on about how this was stupid and it was even more stupid to do it on camera. Starlight tries to defend herself, saying she stopped a RAPE, but there was no girl in the video. And since Starlight didn't get her name, and since the girl was unlikely to go public, the two guys in the alley claimed they were just getting drunk and Starlight beat them up for no reason. Ashley tells Starlight whatever she was planning for the next day is canceled. She's going to have to meet with risk assessment, crisis management, and with legal. Starlight asks if they're going to fire her, and Ashley just tells her to be in Stillwell's office at 10, then storms out. Starlight is left unsure whether she got fired or not.
Because they're not sure at this point.
Yeah, they're not sure. Probably, yeah. It's daytime now. Stillwell is in her office with the senator, the chairman of the committee. She thanks him for coming to the meeting so early, knowing how busy he was the previous night. As she finishes speaking, she is showing him the pictures the bartender took with the phone. He didn't know it was a man until this moment because he was blindfolded.
Right.
He says they're fake, and she says she thinks they both know that they're not. He maintains that it's not possible. He was with a woman named Rhonda. Madeline says they are real, and she knows since she was there. Then she transforms into the sweaty man. Then Stillwell walks in.
I'm so sorry. This addresses man adjective. I love it.
Yeah. Stillwell walks in and addresses the soup as doppelganger and dismisses him. So now we have a name for this individual, doppelganger.
AKA Jabba the Hutt. Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologize. Oh.
Stillwell wants to continue the conversation from the night before regarding the bill in committee. The senator is upset, naturally, and says this is a dirty pool that they're in. He says he's assessing his political prospects in the future, given if this information gets out. He says, he says it's not fatal to be homosexual these days. And Madeline assures him that in Oklahoma, it most certainly is, and that's where his voters are. Yeah. He still doesn't think he can get a bill to pass on the floor if it makes it out of committee. No one wants soups in the army. We leave this conversation, and then we switch to Annika in the crime analytics room. Homelander has come to ask her if they found translucent yet. She says no, but security is on it. Homelander says translucent's been missing for 24 hours and asks if he is in danger. He gets a blank stare in response. I think she's a little intimidated by him, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He says, forget it, and asks for the last known position. Annika tries to call Madeline, and Homelander stops her, saying she's talking to Homelander, not Madeline. She still says she's not sure she's supposed to be talking to him. He tells her straight up, listen, I'm Homelander. I do whatever the I want. He rolls her chair up to the computer desk.
I bet he does.
And makes her get the last known position. She really didn't have much of a choice here.
Nope, none at all. I guess to stay alive or not, it's the choice.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wouldn't do anything to her in that room, but still, he's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
He's a horrifying
back
individual.
to Butcher and company. They're in the room with Translucent, and Frenchie is taking off some medical gloves. He is quite proud of himself.
Yes, he is. I love that he's proud of himself.
Translucent is waking up and saying something doesn't feel right. Frenchie explains that to Translucent that he realized that only his skin is hard, like a turtle. The insides are like normal people, soft. He continues saying, how do you get something inside, and gives a bunch of reasons why you wouldn't want to go through the mouth. You know, you can vomit it up or reject it in some way. Yeah. Translucent is getting concerned, asking what they did to him, as he should be. Butcher very eloquently tells him they stuck plastic explosives up his butt. Frenchie calls it an ass bomb.
Yes, he does.
Mm-hmm.
It is an elegant solution, though.
Yes, very much so. Translucent uncloaks and looks terrified. He says, oh my God. We see Homelander flying low over the city. He sounds like a jet flying by. He's on his way to find them. Butcher is explaining that if Translucent tries to stick a finger up there to get it out, it will explode. He also shows Translucent a hand trigger that can be used to trigger the explosion and asks if he understands. Translucent starts to appear to break down, asking them not to kill him. He tells them he'll tell them everything he knows and searches for something to tell them. Then he says he'll tell them about A-Train. He doesn't know where he was headed, but he knows he was leaving Pop Claws. Apparently, A-Train loves her, though he thinks no one knows. Popclaw is a female soup with spikes that come out of her arms. Apparently, she's not that famous.
I listed here like a super low budget Wolverine.
Now, let me ask you this. Would you say it's more Wolverine or Marrow? You familiar with Marrow?
I'm not. I've never heard of that one.
She's one of the more obscure X-Men villains. She's in Magneto's, what's his side called?
Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Brotherhood?
Yes. Yeah, she's one of the ones that lived in the sewers. She could grow these bone protrusions, and I think she could like rip them off and use them as implements. But yeah, this strikes me more as that, almost that. Because it comes out of her forearm instead of, because with X-23, my first inclination was X-23, but she's like Wolverine where it's coming out of the hand, right? And these are coming out of her forearms. I don't know. It's look up Marrow, and you can tell me if you agree or not. Yeah. Frenchie hears an alarm and goes to check it out. Translucent tells Butcher to ask him anything. He'll tell him. Butcher says normally he'd take him up on that, but they're out of time. He leaves the room. Translucent's begging him, and Butcher closes the door, and he's about to trigger the explosive when Frenchie gets his attention. He has some cameras set up on the perimeter. On the monitor, they see Homelander flying a search pattern over the city. In the upper right corner, it says he's flying at 1,852.297 kilometers per hour, which is 1.5 times the speed of sound. And given he has X-ray vision, I don't know how he's able to visually process what he's seeing at that speed.
Yeah, like I was saying, unless he had super speed
Mm-hmm.
or some other higher thought processes to be able to process that. Because I mean, that's fast, and trying to and looking through hundreds, I guess thousands of buildings, of walls, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot to process.
It is. Once Huey hears this piece of information, Huey really starts freaking out. He knows that Homelander can see through the roof. Frenchie also says that he has super hearing. If they pull the detonator, he will hear. Translucent can see Huey's mouth moving through the door because there's a little window there, and he reads his lips. He now knows that Homelander is looking for him. Butcher says they need to throw Homelander off the scent and references a past job in Pittsburgh. Frenchie says, "You can't be serious." And Butcher confirms he's deadly serious. Frenchie asks Butcher if he knows how much this will cost him. "Put it on the tab," is Butcher's response.
That's a big tab.
Yeah. I am really curious how much he's going to owe Frenchie by the end of this episode.
At least double. At least
he already
double.
owes him double. So double of double. Yeah.
Well, it's just not of not. So
yeah. They both leave Huey alone to deal with Translucent as they go to distract Homelander. And this entire scene from here on out is extremely suspenseful.
Absolutely. It's nerve-wracking. It is gut-wrenching.
Yeah. Frenchie and Butcher get in Frenchie's van, and Butcher asks where it is. Frenchie says it's in the back. Frenchie calls the girl that's at his place. She's sitting there watching TV. There's a soup on the news named Gunpowder saying that mall shooting is a tragedy and more Americans should be armed so he doesn't have to come save the day every time. Frenchie tells her it's a burn. She says, "You're joking." Now he confirms. She begins setting up explosives on some barrels that they have, and she attaches some type of wireless transmitter to them. We're beginning to see how much this is going to cost Frenchie. Everything he has in that place. Yeah. We then go back to Translucent, and he is pissing in his cup that Huey gave him. This act of compassion is going to cause a problem. He splashes the urine on the battery packs and shorts them out.
Now, those are not battery packs, those are car batteries.
Yeah, it's a series of car batteries.
Now, do we call Mythbusters on this one? Because if your car can't take a little something splashing up on the battery when you're driving, you got a problem with the battery.
Right.
And number two is there's no lock on the stupid door either.
That was my big issue with this scene.
Yes.
Because I did see how bad of a job they did wiring this up. Right. It was not a quality wiring job.
Not from a guy who put some meta material on a bullet.
Well, I think Butcher wired the cage up, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it got by Huey, though.
Yeah.
But the fact that there is no lock on this thing is unacceptable.
It's an Arlie Ermy moment. I need Arlie Ermy right there screaming.
Yeah, maybe let's give them a little bit of credit. Maybe they thought they wouldn't need it because they were just about to explode him anyway.
Okay.
Maybe they just forgot to put the lock back on.
Okay, there we go.
That's a possibility.
They forgot to put the lock back on. Okay, I'll go with that.
So he opens this latch and he escapes. Homelander is out in the alley knocking on the window of Frenchie's van. Frenchie pretends to be impressed. He's speaking with the Homelander.
The Homelander. I love that one too.
Mm-hmm. Homelander asks him for an ID. We go back inside. Translucent leaves the room, and Huey is holding the detonator. He tells him to get back in the cage, and Translucent uncloaks.
Now, we had started talking earlier in this episode about an understanding with law enforcement, and there's got to be something there before not Translucent, but Homelander to be able to basically to demand ID from you. You know, the cops don't even really have that right unless unless you give them probable cause, and so Homelander can roll up and ask to check your ID. And he even asked here in a second, we'll get to that, but about looking in the van. So they're authorized on some level as law enforcement, peacekeeping, something.
You really think so?
I don't know. Or is just nobody going to stand up to these people trying to do it?
That's my suspicion.
Is that what it is?
I have a feeling that he's relying on intimidation and the ignorance of the individual to get away with stuff like this.
That could very well be.
Because realistically, in most cases, if the police officer does not have probable cause, people are still going to comply just because they don't know what their rights are or they don't want to start anything.
That is very true.
Let's go with the route that most people aren't going to know in this case whether Homelander has the right to search for or like ask for your ID.
I think Homelander does what Homelander wants, and there's not going to be a lot of folks that are going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I like that Frenchie does. Oh, we'll get into that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Translucent leaves the room. He sees Huey holding the detonator. He tells him to get back in the cage, and Translucent uncloaks. Now, I don't understand why he uncloaks, because theoretically, he could have just stayed cloaked, right?
Yeah.
But maybe he's so freaked out by that explosive being in there, he doesn't want to take a chance.
Maybe.
Yeah. We go back outside. Homelander asks what Frenchie is doing there, and Frenchie tells him it's his place. He's opening a Fogo de Chao. Have you ever eaten at a Fogo de Chao?
I have not, but I've seen them.
Oh man, you need to. Do you like steak?
I love steak, dude. Okay. I'm a Texan.
Yeah. Well, I recommend you try it because we'll talk about it later, but just it's good.
I was so happy because I finally found a really nice mom and pop steakhouse here in my town I live at, and it's kind of high, but man, they are good.
Yeah. It's been a while since I had a steak, so maybe need to get one. Those beef prices, though. Woo! Homelander isn't falling for the small talk. He asks to see what's inside the back of the van. Frenchie says, no offense, but do you have a warrant? And Homelander tells him if he has nothing back there, then he has nothing to worry about, right? That kind of goes towards my earlier point about him kind of relying on intimidation.
That's a very intimidating move.
Right. Yeah. Back inside, Huey is desperately trying to get Translucent back in the cage. And then go back outside. Homelander is walking to the back of the van, and we can tell he's using his X-ray vision. We see that Butcher has left the back of the van, and he's further up the alley, hiding behind a dumpster. So he's not in the back of the van anymore. Go back inside. Translucent is trying to play mind games with Huey, telling him if they kill him, he will be chased his whole life as they try to find him.
He does work on him hard, doesn't he?
Go back. He does, yeah. And he sees him as the weakest person on that crew. And the most likely to let him go. So that's what's, yeah. Outside, Butcher activates the explosives at Frenchie's place. Luckily, Frenchie's companion makes it out just in time. I mean, it's really close. Yeah.
If she didn't make it out, it would have been her fault. She said that.
Yeah, I think she did specify I will be ready at X time or something, right? 3 minutes or something like that. She specified a time. Homelander hears the explosion and takes off. And Frenchie and Butcher breathe a sigh of relief. Translucent is still trying to convince Huey he can have a normal life. Translucent puts his hand on his shoulder, tells him attaboy, and begins to walk out, cloaking himself, thinking he convinced him. Huey looks to his left and sees that keep your hands clean poster from earlier. And I'm not sure what he sees in that poster at that moment that makes him decide to do this, but he pulls that trigger. Translucent explodes, covering Huey completely in gore. I mean, it is excessive.
It's what you would imagine if you inserted some C4 up someone's rectum and pulled the trigger.
I've never envisioned that
either until they mentioned it in that show.
Yeah, that. Oh man!
And then they showed us.
Yeah,
and it's like, whoa.
Yeah. And again, he looks at that poster after he pulls the trigger, and the episode ends.
Now, I'm kind of curious. Do you think with the keep your hands clean, is he trying to keep their hands clean by keeping themselves covered? Or is he just, I don't know, because I never understand the poster. I love it. I love how it triggers him to blowing up the butt bomb. But
the way I always interpreted it was this episode begins with Huey saying he's not a murderer.
Okay.
To me, him seeing that poster was like when he looked at it, it was do not do anything that will get your hands
Right.
dirty. Don't kill anybody.
Sure.
So I don't understand what, when he looks at it before he pulls the trigger, what drives him to make that? Is it like a you, or I don't know what made him do it.
I don't understand that either. And that's a good question. Why? What is the motivation? Why did that poster urge him to pull the trigger? I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I don't necessarily think it's anti-authority. Maybe it's just he doesn't see another way of continuing on this path of trying to get retribution for his girlfriend. Because if Homelander, or not Homelander, if Translucent goes back, he knows that there's probably gonna be some fallout.
Oh, absolutely. They would be hunted down. I think, because he knows that, Homelander, I'm sorry, Translucent was telling him the truth. They would just be hunted mercilessly.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
And Huey inadvertently took care of the problem for him.
Right.
That and Fry's Electronics RF shielding.
Well, in their moment of need, it failed them. Well, actually,
they shot it. They shot
it. That's fair. Yeah. So. All right. Any final thoughts on the episode?
No, just another fantastic episode of The Boys. I can't wait to talk about number 3.
Yeah. Number 3 introduces my favorite character.
Is that where MM comes in? Is that where?
Yes.
Nice. I love it. He's so great.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.